just letting it all hang out. She's a brick house. That lady stacked, and that's a fact. Ain't holding nothing back. Ow, she's a brick house. Yeah, she's the only one built like an Amazon. Good morning. Brick house. The first topic, Christianity is objectively proven through the transcendental argument for God. If we ask the question, whose starting point assumption is the necessary precondition to make debate possible, only the Christian starting point can explain reality in a way that can make debates possible. Any non-Christian starting point would make debate impossible. Therefore, Christianity is true because you have to assume Christianity to even argue. Adam and Eve used dinosaurs like Flintstones. Are you jealous? Do you want a dinosaur? Thanks for the likes, Kane. Well, thou shalt not covet thine ancient ancestors' dinosaur. You shouldn't covet other people's dinosaurs. Dinosaurs won't save you. You need Jesus. Dinosaurs might.
I think it's a great place.
It might seem like an easy answer, you know. Oh, I'll just get a dinosaur. That'll fix all my problems. But it's just a quick fix to the real long-term solution is a relationship with Jesus. Dinosaurs will only take you so far. In the end, dinosaurs they're gonna leave you like empty. Like you need more than dinosaurs to make it in life. Jesus didn't save the dinosaurs because dinosaurs are not made in the image of Gad. Denver, the last dinosaur. He's never saw before. Denver. The devil is a liar on number 3. What does that mean? Of course the devil's a liar. The devil is lame. Denver, the last dinosaur. He's my friend and a whole lot more. Denver, the last dinosaur. Shows me a world never seen before. Jurassic Park is scary in the dark. All the dinosaurs are running wild. Remember that song? Dinosaur abortion. I don't have a problem with that, I guess. Like, I think humans are stewards of God's creation, so we're supposed to respect, as long as we're respectful to God's creation. Like, I don't think it's okay to abuse animals, because God wouldn't. Jurassic Park is frightening in the dark. All the dinosaurs are running wild. Someone shut the fence off in the rain. And I admit it's kind of eerie, but this proves my chaos theory. And I don't think I'll be coming back again. Oh no. How would a dinosaur perform an abortion? That's a good question. Let's see. What's the question? Maybe the dinosaurs are extinct today because of abortions. Right? I don't know. Humans know we are a permanent teacher to ascended individuals as teachers. What? Advice when losing your faith. I would just read the Bible. There's passages where people aren't there prophets that sometimes struggle with their faith. I would just read passages about people in the Bible who are struggling with their faith. Maybe Job is a good one. Well, J. Dyer talks about progress, the myth of progress.
Jimmy the Uber Advantage, $5. What do you think of Young Earth? I favor Young Earth. How would you respond to those who say communism evolved from Christianity in Acts 5 and Mark 10? So there's a lot of easy responses to this. First of all, Acts 5 was a period of the early church being founded and spreading. It is not the norm for the church in every age or in every period, nor is the phase of the church prior to the opening up of the covenant to the Gentiles, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things going on prior to Acts 10 that is not normative for the entire church period. Secondly, we have a model for Acts 5. It's called monasticism. And people want to take up that type of lifestyle, they can still do it. But it's done voluntarily, right? Communism is crazy. Communism is a rejection of Christianity, right? But Christianity is not an egalitarian liberal religion. It is neither egalitarian nor is it elitist. Christianity has elements of both. It has hierarchy as well as elements of universality. So to say it's either or is really to arbitrarily pick certain elements of Christianity and say, Christianity, because it says give alms, all it is egalitarianism. No, that's not true. Can you explain the connection between the Gnostic theosophical worldview and the Big Bang evolution worldview? Well, the connection is just simply the ancient world. The ancient pagan religions, ancient Greek, ancient Egyptian, ancient Hindu.
See, I think historically Christianity has been used to support a vast array of political ideologies. There has been communist Christians, there's been capitalist Christians, there's been monarchist Christians, there's been Christians that support democratic republic. So I don't think Christianity is like I think Christianity should be used to question human ideologies. So like, okay, with science, so you have science and then you have like the story in Genesis, right? And so some people, they'll take what's popular in the world, like science, and they'll take and they'll, based on what's popular in the world, they'll question the claims of the Bible, which is like fine, right? But they never do the opposite. They never take the claims of the Bible and then question the claims of the world. So it has to go like both ways, right? So I think the real value of Christianity in the Bible is it's like the mind of Jesus. We have this mind that's like sort of independent of humanity and that we can use to get perspective and purpose and meaning, and like say like if we use Christianity to question what we do as humans, I think that's like the value of Christianity, is to ask the question like, are we doing what God wants us to do? Not just like, see, today we don't ask this question like, are we doing the right thing? No one asks this. It's just all like, can we do it? Then do it. It's just means to means. There's no ends. There's no goal. There's no purpose. Christianity gives us the purpose and gives us the direction. And we use like love to guide us. Welcome.
Hello.
What would you like to say?
So I just got kicked off some other live. I don't know how many viewers you have, but I just went to the next one because I was kind of fired up. But I joined this guy's live, and he said, his title was like Satanism is, like the one true religion. I was like, okay, this is sketchy. I'm gonna join and I'm gonna tell him what's up. And we were actually having like a debate, and I was just proving him wrong over and over. And then all the people in the chat started like turning against him, and they were actually asking questions like, how do I get more into this? And I was like, you guys don't need to be into this. This is darkness. Don't get consumed by Satan. He's the father of lies. And I kept telling everyone that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And eventually people started saying Bible verses, and the guy shut down his live because he was so defeated. And all I see is debate live. Christianity is objectively proven. Atheism is irrational. I can agree with, I don't know what you mean by point one, but point two, atheism is irrational. It definitely is. You know, you can see God everywhere you look. Look at your fingerprint. Nobody has the same. All snowflakes are different. Water has been around forever, and God is the water of life, and we've corrupted it, but the water of life is Jesus.
I'm a Christian, so I just promote like Romans 1 that God's obvious. No one can rationally deny God. It's objectively proven.
I hate to be like that guy, but what type of Christian are you? Like, what is your denomination?
I'm like an evangelical.
What's the definition of that? Because I feel like I know, but I don't. Think you believe in the Trinity?
Yeah.
Do you believe Jesus Christ died for your sins? He's the Son of God?
Yeah, I'm a Christian.
Amen. That's all you need in life, brother. I don't know your name. I don't know if you have posted or if you're like secret, but if you want, I'll add you to my prayer journal for anything.
I'm kind of looking for like opposition actually, because I'm kind of looking to do debates. So.
Oh shoot. Well, I don't know if you have a prayer book or anything, but you should write down the username. I'm gonna type it in chat. It's Awakened Oracles. You should debate him tomorrow. He had like 10 viewers, and that's it. And he kicked off like 3 people for just quoting scripture. And like I joined again on a second account, and he was like, do you believe Satan is the god of this world? And I was like, no. And then I was like, well, he is in a way. And he kicked me off right after I said that, and he was like, oh, this guy's a blasphemer. He denied the Holy Spirit. And it's like, I was gonna say yes because he was cast out of heaven, and that's the evil people's god in this world. But he's a lowercase g. He can never be God. That's why he was kicked out of heaven, because he was prideful and he thought he was on the same level, but he wasn't. And that's why so many people, you know, I don't want to say too many bad things on live and like give myself profile, but you know, that's why they have the pride flag, like and it has six colors instead of 7, which is Roy G. Biv, you know, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. That's the rainbow was God's covenant to the earth that he would never flood the earth again. And then it's because the people were so wicked, he wiped them out. And then now we proudly wave pride, and we're proud of our sins instead of like, that's worse than, I don't even know how to say it, but that's just bad. You know, you sin and then you're proud of sinning. Like, you're supposed to be, all sins are the same in the eyes of God. So it doesn't matter. I mean, there's like terrible sins like murder. I don't know if that's comparable to stealing, but God hates all sin. And if all sins are equal in the eyes of God, he hates all sin equally. And
all right, man. Okay, well, man, thanks for coming.
Pray for this guy. I'm gonna give you his username. His name is Awakened Oracles in chat. Like, don't forget. Like,
okay,
if it's the last thing you do, just pray for him, because he was just really against God, and I think he's just lost. And
there's a lot of lost people.
Pray for every single one. Like,
okay, man. Thanks for coming.
Well, what's your name? I'll pray for you.
Mars.
Indian philosophies were all evolutionary. Literally, all of them. I mean, there's differences, but in essence, they were evolutionary worldviews. So the connection is that theosophy is just Blavatsky creating her own cult and religion from an amalgamation of all the ancient cults. And newsflash, people that create cults just rip off and copy and paste from ancient religions. That's what they all do. Well, Emmanuel, $10. I'm disappointed in the Roman Catholic Church and not very good at reading. I'm grateful for your videos. Oh, cool. Awesome. Glad I can be of help. While useful to make fun of bad arguments, I would caution making fun of people. Well, I'm sorry, but it's not wrong to always make fun of people. It's not, I mean, especially people that are exceptionally wicked. In the Bible, many times.
Well, if someone is like self-righteous and sanctimonious, it can be a good thing to offend them, because arrogant people could use, like, it's helpful to them to be humbled. So if someone's super arrogant, it can be like helpful to insult them. Now you can obviously take it too far.
Calls these people fools, it actually mocks them, right? Elijah mocks the prophets of Baal. So no, I don't feel bad about making jokes about Richard Dawkins. It makes me feel bad as when I watch The Daily Show. No, I'm sorry. I don't think that it's always wrong to engage in satire and that kind of stuff.
It makes me feel bad when you make a joke about a person. I feel so bad. Oh.
So I disagree with you there, but I thank you for your... All right, so we're going to give this debate to Laser. Laser wins the William Lane Craig, William Zox debate, because he is definitely a evolutionarily fit future man. He will go into the future. Can you take... No. Can you take me higher? Can you take me higher? To a place where blind men see into their souls of their fathers and rescue the dragon. How's that?
You get set back by disasters, but then again you get a gradual incremental improvement in the way that life operates, and so that a creature would defeat its ancestor of 1 million years before. And you see the same in economics. You see this.
You see why this is all question begging? We're better. We're better than the descendants. Defeating the new species is a progress, right? It's better. You're winning. Those are all value judgments. Value judgments are not given to you from data, right? Data doesn't tell you whether the data is good or bad, right or wrong, right? Every one of these scientism goobers comes to the conclusion.
Well, think about it. In the past, civilizations engaged in child sacrifice. The Bible says this. So I'm a person who thinks that if something that happens in the past, it probably happens in the present. And so when I look and I see abortion, and I think, well, there was civilizations that did child sacrifice in the past, and I mean, what's the difference? Just because we put a scientific framing, we tend to think, well, we've progressed so far. We're modern humans. We're not that much different from ancient humans. So just because you're modern, it doesn't mean you're like not engaging in some weird superstitious crap all the time, like child sacrifices. It's exactly what an abortion is.
That there are all of these oughts that you can derive from an is. And again, this is simply not the case. It's very easy to anybody who's philosophically literate to point out that there's nothing about a list of so-called facts or traits that gives you an ought or an is. But we've already got multiple.
What Jay is talking about is something in philosophy. It's called an is-ought fallacy. This is from a guy named David Hume. And he says that just because something is the case doesn't mean it ought to be the case. So sometimes people will appeal to nature. It's called a naturalistic fallacy too. Like, oh, because X is the case in nature, therefore X is good, or we ought do X. And it doesn't. It just doesn't follow that because something is a certain way that it ought be that way. Like, just because society is a certain way doesn't mean society ought be that way, right? Because you could be living in a sick society that did child sacrifices. Now, obviously, we ought not do child sacrifice.
Claims that are unjustified and inconsistent with the metaphysical attack pattern that the
metaphysical attack pattern, Delta, engage. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian myself. I was just kind of wondering about the first thing where it can be objectively proven.
Well, I think the Bible says this, like in Romans 1, where it talks about like God's obvious and you can't rationally deny God. It says something like to that effect. I'm kind of paraphrasing.
Okay.
But the argument I make is a transcendental argument. So there's like a book I read. This is the book. It's called The Objective Proof for Christianity. And it's a bit like philosophically dense. It's not too difficult, but there's an argument in this book that it's like lock solid, just shows that Christianity is true, necessarily true. That's the transcendental argument. So like the real simple version of it, it's called the transcendental argument for God.
Okay.
And this is really like, I can flesh this out more and explain this more, but real simply, it's just like, if knowledge exists, then God exists because God's necessary for knowledge. And then we say knowledge exists, therefore God exists. And they can't deny knowledge, right? The idea is that we're taking something that you can't be skeptical of. Because to be skeptical of knowledge, you would have to knowledge. To say you don't know is a knowledge claim. So knowledge has to be possible to even be skeptical. So basically, you can't be skeptical that knowledge is possible or that knowledge exists. And then we just go like, well, what would have to be true if knowledge is it's the fact that we have knowledge. What else would have to be true for us to have knowledge? And we can show, like, demonstrate that God would have to, the Christian God specifically, not just a generic God, would have to exist for there to be knowledge. It's due to human limitations. We need to rely on God to know things, basically.
Okay.
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say, I'll keep watching and hopefully somebody can come up to try to argue that, and then I can kind of see further. But yeah, that's interesting though.
All right, man. I could play some demonstrations of arguments, but yeah, here I'll drop you down. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Here I can play some clips. I'll look for some of the argument. Atheism hype speech. Atheism. Be an atheist. Come and join me, atheism. Why are your S's? You sound like a demon. Never mind that. It's atheism is the best. There's Jay Dyer's a bit like well, here's an example.
How can you prove God's existence? The transcendental argument. Okay, so can you elaborate on it?
Yeah, without God's existence, it would be impossible to give a philosophical justification for one's worldview. That's how tag goes.
That's how it
Aren't
be.
worldviews subjective?
No. I mean, that would be a self-defeating position if you believe that worldviews were all subjective.
So you don't think we would have different worldviews? We got the same worldviews.
Having different worldview doesn't entail that they're all subjective. That's a non sequitur.
And the audio is kind of messed
So
up here.
you think all worldviews are the same?
No. At root, everybody has a worldview, but not everybody has the same worldview. But that doesn't mean that.
The audio sounds kind of messed up on that video. I don't know what happened there. It sounds like really tinny. And Jay sounds very upset. Like, it sounds like he's at the end of a day of debating people who don't know what the hell they're talking about. He sounds very angry. He's probably hangry. He's thinking about PB and J. Let's try this one.
I wanted to ask before I get into this if you're discussing tag on this live or if it's just Trinity, because I don't want to disrespect your topic.
Why are all these sound?
No, it's fine. It's open to all kinds of topics.
Cool.
Okay, so this is Amdir. This guy's this isn't probably the best example either, because this guy's gonna get super philosophical.
So I have this one formulation of tag that I got from your Discord, and I'm wondering if this is the one you defend or if there's a different one. It's possibly Y, necessarily possibly Y, necessarily possibly Y implies X, where X is God, and then Y is something that we're saying God is the necessary precondition for.
Mm-hmm.
And then necessarily possibly Y implies necessarily X, therefore necessarily X. That sounds fair.
It sounds right, yeah.
So my question is what's the justification for premise 3 that necessarily possibly Y implies X? So if we take, for example, whatever your kind of transcendental of choice is, whether that's logic, knowledge, leave that up to you, what you want to fill in there. And then I'm curious kind of what the motivation for that is.
No, I think that's a fair question. The way I like to form the argument at that point is to actually say that it's all of the transcendental categories together, because I think they're all interrelated. So I think, for example, you can't have knowledge without a knower. So in other words, knowledge, the external world or something like that, knowledge of objects, identity over time.
Yeah, so what he's getting into, Jay does have a Discord. I'm banned from it, though. What he's getting to is kind of this idea that facts are interconnected. The fact of boiling water, that also relies on the fact of atmospheric pressure, because depending on atmospheric pressure, that's going to change the temperature at which water boils. So these facts are connected to each other. They rely on each other. I just made a joke about Jay, and they took it personally. I just made one joke, literally. I guess it was the first thing I did when I joined the service, so they probably just thought I was trolled. But I just made one joke about Jay. Because facts are interconnected. So think about this, if something exists, then it's true that something exists. So truth and existence are interconnected, because every time something exists, then there's something that's true. And if something's true, then something exists. And because truth and existence are interconnected, you need a source that connects them together, because you can't have one without the other. So it wouldn't make sense for, say, the earth to exist, but truth doesn't exist, right? You have to have truth and existence at the same time. So that requires like the word in philosophy would be like a unifying principle, or like something to ground, a grounding relationship. So the idea is because in God creates the universe, so he gives us existence, and at the same time, God is the source of truth. So God can connect existence and truth together. And without God, how can the atheists how can they explain that this connection between truth and existence? Everything in the atheist model is going to be like disconnected, disjointed. So they're kind of getting into that.
That assumes a self, right? So that's one of the transcendental categories. So I think that all the transcendental categories are interrelated. And that's why I think that really it's a question of Christian metaphysics. So I would rather put Christian metaphysics into that section. And that's what leads to the notion of God that we have. So, but I agree, like if you left it as just something like, I forget what example you used. What'd you say? It's something like, pick your logic, right? So if you just said logic,
ability to have knowledge, something like that.
yeah, I think that might be a little ambiguous. So I like to say the entire Christian paradigm.
I mean, I guess that is, I mean, you would have to like add quantifiers into the argument there, because then you'd have to have something like for all transcendental X. God is a necessary precondition, or that transcendental implies God. I mean, that's fine. You could do that, but I guess it would be like the same question then, kind of like,
well, that's why I always say that I think the argument is better as the entire paradigm. That's what's going in there. And then usually people then are just trying to figure out who disagree. Well, can you even put it in?
Yeah, so the idea, what Jay's talking about, a paradigm, everyone has a paradigm. You could think of it as like your confirmation bias. Okay, so let's say I'm a young earth creationist. That's part of my paradigm. So when I look at a fossil through my paradigm, I'm going to interpret the fossil to be like 5,000 years old, not like 7 million years old, which would be another paradigm. So that would be like an old earth model paradigm. So when the old earth model person looks at the fossil, we're looking at the same fossil, but we have two different paradigms that we're interpreting the data or the fossil. And so then it's not a matter of evidence, because we both agree on the evidence. We're like, we both see the data, the same fossil. It's a question of who is interpreting the evidence correctly, whose paradigm is correct. And so when we argue for Christianity, we argue for the whole paradigm. An agnostic Swede. Well, you can't really be agnostic. That's a anyone's welcome to come up. Do you want me to invite you? Yeah, so in science, this is a problem called underdetermination of data, because science can give us data, but science can't tell us how to interpret data. And therefore, like, the question is who's interpreting the data correctly. So that it's a question of paradigm. So is the Christian paradigm or the atheist paradigm true? Hello, what would you like to say, Harry?
No, I don't know, because like for me, right? Like I've been a Christian for a while, but like I guess recently I've definitely been falling off, just because I feel like there is a lack of evidence that I've been able to find, and like so the caption for me, if you could help me out with that would be awesome.
Well, there's a book you could check out called The Objective Proof for Christianity.
Yeah.
I'll add you in a second, Lars. So I read this book, The Objective Proof for Christianity. There's an argument in there that will show it's an argument about, like, I was just talking about paradigms. So then it shows that only the Christian paradigm can interpret reality correctly. For example, like, if God doesn't design your brain, then your brain is just the result of like a cosmic accident or like evolution. And if that's the case, then there's no reason to think that you're reasoning accurately, because you could have evolved like improper logic or something, or you could have evolved to be irrational and you would never know it, and you just gaslight yourself. Whereas, like, if God designs your brain and God designs the world, then it makes sense that your like thinking is accurately reflecting the world around you.
Right.
So that's like a big
I have to head to the gym, but I just want to pop in. But yeah, I'll check that out, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Have a good day, bro. God bless.
Well, I wish you well. Welcome, Lars.
Hi, I'm a 61-year-old from Sweden, and I think one thing that bothers me that has happened several times during this live, you say atheist like we are stupid or something. I mean, I don't, and I call myself an agnostic because it's impossible to prove that God doesn't exist. So there's a small chance that he exists, and I would be thrilled if I saw evidence of God, but I haven't. And also, I think, why are the two groups, Christian and non-believers, so hostile to each other? I mean, I have many Christian friends, and we never argue. I think it's a little bit crazy, and that about world
Debate
view.
is like a game. So when you play a game, you try to win the game. It's nothing personal.
Absolutely. But also, you said something about worldviews, and I think every person has her or his different worldview.
Yeah.
So, and I actually, some of the parts in the Bible, the what Jesus preaches, I agree completely. We should be friendly to our neighbors.
Yep. Yeah, it's obvious. That's why when I read the gospel, it's like what Jesus said is obviously true. So I don't know. That's like, I think we should all follow him.
The problem now in the U.S., as I see it, the Christian nationalists, they would shun Jesus if he came back now because he's too woke.
Potentially that. I think if Jesus returned, people would crucify him essentially like they did before. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was all I wanted to say, and we don't need to be hostile to each other. We can exist side by side.
Yeah, but I just like to make fun. It's like I like to do jokes and tease people, so it's nothing like personal.
No, I understand. It's not really something personal.
Yeah.
I've seen much worse. I was cast out in a Christianity live because I said I was from Sweden. Like, what?
All right. I got
Anyway,
you.
thank you for letting me up.
You're welcome. All right. I wish you well. Kane, I don't. The nationalism seems kind of ambiguous because I tried to like Google it. Because this guy in my chat, he'll come in and say that I'm a nationalist, and so I Googled it, and it's like I couldn't find a clear. It seems like everyone defines it differently, so it's these political ideologies are hard to pin down. I don't really know. I don't really get. I'm not really political, so welcome, Patrick. What would you like to say?
I mean, I think that the interesting thing about religion is it's a great basis point for, at least for me, my understanding of it and what it's been utilized for is it's a social cohesion mechanism. In the past, it was used to allow society to have a common, a common middle ground of understanding between everyone in the society, and it had kept societies incredibly well grounded within themselves. But obviously, as religious groups sort of interacted with each other in the past, conflict sparked from it, which indicates that it also exacerbates a personality flaw, or say a personality flaw, a flaw of humanity, which is the survival instinct and the hunter-killer drive in some instances, which is
Man,
somewhat what keeps us.
you've bought into total science religion, huh? Like, it's funny. You're like,
Well, so the interesting thing is science was born from questioning God, right? And if God didn't want us to understand the universe more intuitively and more, and more truly, it would never have worked, would it?
yeah, but the problem
Right.
is, I mean, like, you're treating science like it's an absolute truth, and a lot of things you're saying.
No, it's not. It's a process, right? And this is the issue we have in the modern world, because this is the misconception that's been applied with the COVID fiasco, right? Is that everyone, especially Fauci, all these other people, believe the science. Believe that's not how science works, is it? Scrutinize the science. The only reason science works is when you test it. It's when you theory test it. It's when you process it through the ringer constantly, right? You can't.
Well, even then, you never really. It's never an absolute truth.
Exactly, it's not. It's always hyper. It's always. It can always be. It can always be retested and put through another set of stringencies. That's the beauty of science. It's never absolute.
But that's not.
It can always be developed, and that's the issue you also have with it, because that's where you get the social sciences, where they take it completely off track and just use human interpretation as their basis for theory, which is not necessarily rational either, because it's emotional in nature.
So
And it's reactive.
Yes, you started with social sciences, where you're talking about that it's a cohesion mechanism for societies, but like, I don't see it that way. I see it the opposite. I see that Christianity, to me, maybe it's like an anti-religion, but I see it as a subversive force in the world and society, and that's a good thing.
Science itself.
What?
Science itself is a subversive.
No,
thing.
Christianity. I see. You said Christianity was a cohesion, social.
Yeah, it technically is. It's authoritarian and cohesive. A lot of religions are authoritarian and cohesive in nature, because they basically,
Sure,
like,
but
think about it. That you in old style. And I mean, in current, if you go to church every Sunday, that is you like like reassuring that social cohesion mechanism, and you're gathering with a group that you can then have a camaraderie with and have a shared identity with and all this kind of other stuff. And that's great for people when, for being assured that you have people that support, the way you're living, and especially when you're all treating each other well. That's got to be amazingly reassuring for people. I wouldn't ever try and knock that, because if that's what you require to have a happy life, then power to, like, not. I don't think anyone has a reason to say that you're not allowed to do that, because if that's how you can see out your life, then power to you.
like, I don't see why this is like, none of this is like relevant. These psychological reports and stuff. Like, it's like, is it true or not true? Right? Is Jesus who he says he is, or is he a liar? Let's.
Romans would have everyone believe that he was a heretic, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh,
I'm saying I would claim that Jesus is who he says he is, and if you deny that, you'll be reduced to absurdity. That's what I believe. And I think I can prove that objectively.
I think everyone who veers away from a universal truth ends up making a mockery of themselves eventually. So if what you're doing is contravening like the future, the what would be best for the future, like I do believe that it's the way that reality works. I do have an understanding that the way reality works is deterministic, and in that.
That's self-defeating.
No, it's not, because basically, no, it's not. It depends on the mindset you take. If you're determining success, and every single doubt in your mind is just swatted away like a fly trying to pester you, well,
Do you have
that is itself its own empowering matrix, right? And again, it depends, because the way I look at things.
You're saying your choices are determined?
I say that you have, like, for me, not necessarily for everyone else, but for me, if I determine that, like, I can determine a way through things even when the outcome looks bleak. Like, as someone, and this is very, very anecdotal, right? As someone that's managed to swim away from a shark after kicking it in the snout on instinct, I think that if you really want to make something out of life, it's all up to you if you really want to.
All right. Do you have arguments, or just like, what is this? Do you have an argument? Are you an atheist?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Do you have an argument?
Not necessarily that I don't believe in God. It's more that, like, belief itself is more of a. It can be a double-edged sword sometimes. Belief.
Dude, you're talking in riddles, dude. What the fuck are you talking about? You have beliefs. Do you believe? So you are an atheist? Irrationally, you like live in a
Atheism
fantasy.
itself is not actually like not believing in God, or atheism technically, fundamentally, is a lack of belief.
Oh, is it? So it's a
Yeah.
lack. So would you admit that your position's irrational then, because you lack rationality?
Oh, that seems a projection of yours, though.
Oh, is it? Well, what's the rationality for your position?
Well, that if God existed, I probably wouldn't have been CSE'd. So, if God existed, every single person that I tried to talk to about it would not have turned their back on me and tried to use it against me. If God, all these things, or maybe it's just indicative that the people I was telling were not God's people. Maybe if that could be the case.
So God hurt your feelings, therefore God doesn't exist?
No, I experienced something that makes me doubt the capacity of a God if he did exist.
Oh, really?
Yes, like I experienced such trauma that if God does exist, then it's either because well, people who are religious would say, well, what did you do? And, people who are spiritual would go, well, you've obviously got some really bad fucking karma then, haven't you? Like you obviously deserve that from a past life or something along the lines. And again, well, who's to say? You can't research stuff like that because we have no scientific process for being able to determine whether or not like reincarnation exists on that front anyway, because we can't track where souls go once they die yet.
Oh my fucking God, dude, you just bloviate like forever. You never heard Job? Like he lost his like crops, he got boils, his whole family unalived, and he didn't like stop believing in God. He's asking God, like, why do you let these bad things happen? And God told Job that his puny human brain wouldn't be able to understand, even if God told him. Because
That whole thing just seems like, to be fair, that whole thing just seems like there was a jinn playing a trick on someone pretending to be God. To be honest, from my understanding.
yeah, the story starts out with God is like sort of happy with Job's faith, and then Satan says, well, he's only faithful because he has a good life. If he didn't have a good life, he wouldn't have faith in you. And God takes Satan up on that bet, basically, and he allows Satan to do these, like, every horrible thing imaginable to Job. Job suffers more than anyone, but Job doesn't lose his faith, although he does question God, and God gives a response. And God rewards Job's faith, but he gives him a better family. Like before, his kids were really annoying. Then God gives him like better kids, and his wife's like hotter, and like he's got better crowd. So like he gets everything back, but it's like way better because he had faith in God.
Definitely, in my opinion, it's almost disempowering, but that's just me.
Disempowering. Oh.
It's just saying I'm gonna allow myself to suffer instead of trying to, you know, create solutions.
You're just like an evolved. You'd rather just be like an evolved ape, and then you unalive and you just decompose in your worm food, and that's it.
Who's to say? So what's to say that? Okay, this is my theory. What's to say that your God is not simply using your faith to empower himself for some other ulterior motive, and anyone who doesn't ascribe to religion actually finds out the truth of the matter when they die?
There's no ulterior motive in Christianity. Christianity is about like unconditional love, loving God, loving others. It's about a life of service to others. The whole reason God created us in the universe.
But that's the thing is just because you can still be altruistic even if you're not religious.
Yeah, but it would have no meaning or purpose.
It would mean even more. No. It would mean even more. I'm doing it because I'm doing it because I want to do it for the simple goodness of who I am, not because some God is going to reward me in the afterlife.
You're just molecules and motions. You're just doing it because you're determined to do it by various antecedent causes like chemical reactions or your environment.
It's the same for you, but your chemical reactions
didn't hug you.
You're doing it for a God.
No,
it's a similar thing.
I have freedom. My choices matter and they mean something because there is choice. Since it's God's plan that humans have their actions and their choices matter, and we participate in God's plan. You are just a biochemical like robot, basically. Your molecules in motion. Nothing matters. There's no purpose. Choice. There's no choice. You're just determined.
Do you see what's happening with you, though?
Hmm?
Your faith is being questioned, and the devil has your tongue.
Dude, you're just talking riddles, dude. I'm so sick of this.
I'm pointing out the reality.
I'm sick of that crap.
Your entire paradigm into.
Dude's like talking in riddles the whole time. Man, they're really coming out the woodworks this morning. I got bodied by Peterson. Oh my god.
Do an argument. I don't see why you can't, but.
Oh, so you kind of like don't really endorse this argument because you don't think that arguments work for this kind of like paradigm talk.
No, I think they do work for paradigms when you put paradigm into the correct place.
So, I mean, maybe an easier way to ask is...
Well, let me put it this way. Christianity is the net... So I like X is the necessary condition of Y therefore X, right? So Christianity is the necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge. And the way I'm getting to that is that for the, quote, possibility of knowledge, that would include all the transcendental categories. Because if you toss out one of them, knowledge is no longer justifiable.
Okay, so then we can kind of fill in the variables here, and it's like necessarily possibility of knowledge implies, I guess, do you want to say like Christianity or God's existence or something like that?
Well, I want it to be specific, like not just God's existence, because God's existence might be all kinds of different theisms that I don't think are compatible. And a big part of the argument is having the right metaphysic, and that includes the Trinity. So you need the essence and distinction. You need divine conceptualism.
Like this kind of orthodox, so maybe we fill in for X like this kind of orthodox Christian worldview. So necessarily the possibility of knowledge implies like the orthodox Christian worldview.
Yes.
Okay, so then I guess now that I'm like clear about what the variables are here, then the kind of original question was like, how do we motivate?
J.L. Martin? Do you mean J.L. Warren? Who's J.L. Martin? You must mean J.L. Warren. Yeah, I posted a video about it.
This.
What do you mean?
I'm Amdir. I know, philosopher me. And I like Lord of the Rings. Sweet. Hey, welcome, Cosmic.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
So, how is Christianity proven to be true?
We would prove Christianity with a transcendental argument for God. So Christianity would be like a foundational belief or like a paradigm. And so transcendental arguments prove foundational beliefs.
But what's exactly a transcendental argument?
So I don't know a good way to explain this. Like, I could take like any fact and show that God's necessary for that fact.
Okay. Like what fact? Like in the physical world?
Yeah, like you're talking, right? So I go for the fact that you're talking, what other fact has to be true? And
Okay, I thought you were asking me.
We know that there has to be like a physical order in the world for you to talk, like consistency. If there's no consistency every time you try to say a word, like if without consistency every time I try to say car, it's not going to sound like car. Sometimes it'll sound like house or roof or bat. You know, it would sound random every time.
Yeah.
There has to be like, it's called like regularity of nature or uniformity of nature in the physical world to even talk.
I mean, you do realize that like there used to be a different like calendar used, for example, a different language spoken and our language and calendar we use today was influenced by the Catholic Christian Church.
Right, but I'm not sure what that has to do with the price of tea in China.
It makes sense to you why where you are right now, why Christianity is proven true if it's a world built from Christianity, right? Like they say December 25th, Christmas is to celebrate Jesus' birthday. But December 25th was not even a thing for thousands of years, before, Christ. So it's just like an objectively created thing. That's proven, yes.
Okay, yeah, dates, the calendar is something humans create, yeah. And
Yeah.
so holidays, yeah.
But I do think the transcendental, right, like religion, like the baseline religion is actually Hinduism.
Oh my God, you're Are your parents Hindu?
No,
Oh my God, you're a Hindu.
my mom's Catholic. My dad's agnostic. I studied religions, and Hinduism seems more objectively true.
Well, I don't know how you could defend it because it makes logic impossible. So you couldn't even argue if it.
How does it make logic impossible?
Distinctions are an illusion because you and me are both Brahmin.
No, Brahman says that in this life we're all separated.
Yeah, but it's an illusion. So we're not really. Ultimately, we're Brahmin. So
Yeah, deep down inside, yeah.
This argument is an illusion, so there's no point to argue. So your position's self-defeating.
So why do you not argue? In the Hindu scriptures, it says that we are separate. When we come to life here, we are separated from Brahman. We have our individual lives and desires.
It says it's an illusion. Ultimately, we're both Brahmin.
But it's still
we're not
matters.
really arguing. It's an illusion of an argument. So guess what that means? You can't argue.
I don't think so. I feel like we're missing a step.
No,
because in the Hindu scriptures, it says that we're separated. Like this life, when we reincarnate, we're not Brahman. Like when Brahman comes down to earth, he's not Brahman. He's a demigod. Like Vishnu and
they
Shiva.
believe that ultimately everything is Brahmin. Ultimately. So ultimately, you and me are both Brahmin, which means ultimately we're not really arguing.
But the deep is down. But right now, reality, yes, we are. Right now, we are not Brahmin.
Yeah, I'm
We
talking
have
about
our own
ultimate
subjective
reality.
reality.
In ultimate reality, we're not arguing. It's just an illusion.
I think you're getting too deep into it. But
Okay, I
okay,
think I think you're too surface level. And if you were a deep thinker, you'd be a Christian.
But why?
For what I just said to you, we can't even argue, and your Hinduism can't debate.
I told you I study religions. I'm more agnostic, but I did study religions, and I find Hinduism to be the most objectively true. It was the first religion, the first way of life.
Yeah, but just because something's first doesn't mean it's true.
But there is respect that we should give to it. It was the first scroll.
What if like the first religion was like some crazy Yahtzee religion or something? Like we
But
went.
it's not. It was written in the caves, written on leaves, and it became the
Well,
very first scroll.
that society is like has a class system, and I don't think class systems are good.
I mean, that's India personally. Like, yeah, in Hindu, they talk about different castes, but they never made it into law. That was Indians who decided to make that into law. It was more of a philosophical, spiritual topic in the Vedas.
Christianity gave us freedom.
How?
Have you heard of America?
Yes.
Yes. Do you mind if I give someone else a chance?
Oh, you don't want to debate me. I thought you were trying to explain how Christianity gave you freedom.
Well, I was thinking like since we're both Brahmin, maybe you could give us your money. Why do
Hello?
want to debate? I don't get it. Um, welcome.
How's it going?
Going well.
Can you run me through tag like premise by premise?
I could, sure. I mean, there's not one tag argument though. There's like a million.
The one that you uphold to? That you use?
I mean, I can use any of them. I use all of
Sure.
them.
Just pick one.
So like a simple one would be premise one: to know anything, someone must know everything to ensure coherence. Because knowledge relies on a coherent framework. So like to know that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, it depends on knowing other things like atmospheric pressure, molecular behavior, thermodynamics.
Yeah, can you restate that? You said there has to be something that knows all.
Yeah, premise one is to know anything, someone must know everything to ensure coherence.
I guess I reject premise one already, but what's the premises so I can see the coherence?
You can't reject premise one.
Okay, what's premise two? I can run it down, but sure. What's premise two?
Only an all-knowing God fits this role.
And is there a third premise, or does it go to conclusion?
Just God's conclusion, God's existence is necessary for human knowledge.
Yeah, I would reject premise one.
You can't.
Why?
Because knowledge relies on a coherent framework because all facts are interconnected, right? So, for example,
Yeah.
you agree that facts are interconnected?
No, I don't know. I would like you to demonstrate.
Yeah, so water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, right? But that fact depends on like understanding things like atmospheric pressure, because atmospheric pressure is going to change the temperature it boils.
Yeah, I would say all things are contingent within this world to a certain sense. That doesn't mean it's all coherent, right? You're saying every fact is connected?
Focus. Yeah, they're interconnected, right? Because the fact of water boiling is connected between like atmospheric pressure facts about the behavior of molecules, and facts about thermodynamics.
Yeah, I mean, you could just say everything is matter, so we understand matter, that there's a connection.
What on God's green earth? Can you focus on the fucking argument? What the fuck?
Is that what you do when someone is coherent, is just start getting mad?
Dude, what are you talking about?
Yeah, everything is atoms. We understand.
Look, if you're gonna act like an insane, crazy person, well, I'm just gonna kick you because I don't want to talk to crazy people, okay?
What did I say that was crazy about that?
You are bonkers, dude. Now, focus, okay? Focus.
I'm pretty focused, man.
Focus. So,
Okay.
like, I'll break this down real simple, right? For your simple mind.
Okay.
A puzzle requires all pieces to form a complete picture, right?
Okay.
So if you're looking at a puzzle with missing pieces, you could misinterpret the picture, right?
You could. How do you know you have every piece in this fact ideology?
What are you fucking... Again, why are you so crazy?
How is that crazy? It's a
Focus
genuine
on the
question.
argument. Focus.
You would think a deep
This
thinker
is
would be able
fucking...
to
This
think
is
of
so
philosophical
fucking...
things.
Dude, this is so fucking obviously true. You can't argue with this, so stop. Stop being crazy.
How do you know it's true?
I'm trying to explain it to you. Like, when you look at a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, if there's missing pieces, you could misinterpret what the picture is, right? You could get things wrong about the picture of the jigsaw puzzle, right?
Yeah.
So knowledge is the same way, right? If you have fragmented knowledge, there's nothing to ensure like you have a coherent framework of knowledge. You could be misinterpreting everything you know to be true could be false because of this unknown knowledge that would undermine.
How do you know you have all pieces of the puzzle, sort of say?
I don't know everything. I'm saying God knows everything.
But if you can't know everything, why are you just chucking it up to a deity to know everything?
I'm not dude. In the Christian worldview, there's a God who's revealed himself to us that he knows everything, right? And that type of entity is going to be necessary to ensure coherence, a coherent framework for knowledge. Without God, there could always be some unknown knowledge that exists that would undermine your knowledge, so you wouldn't have you wouldn't be able to ensure coherence of knowledge.
Yeah, and I'm saying that if we don't have a concept of knowledge and the grandiose and how much knowledge there is to be learned, how do we know that there's uniformity? If you can't understand all knowledge, how do you know that something has to understand all knowledge?
But what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? So the question is, how do you ensure coherent framework for knowledge without an omniscient entity? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know how you would ensure coherence. I don't think anyone would ever have coherence on all knowledge.
You just lost the debate then. You just lost the debate, so I proved God. So are you a Christian, or do you not know anything?
I think you're a Darthist. You worship Gary.
Completely destroyed. See how they like weasel? The guy's he's trying to weasel. It was so obvious what I was saying was true, and he's just a little weasel trying to deny what is obvious.
Yo, hello.
Oh my god.
What's up?
Hi.
Yeah, I'ma fuck your dirty mom's nigger ass, nigger, dirty cotton picking Christian. Fuck you, fuck your God. Your God died on a cross, bitch. Fuck you and fuck your mom. I'ma rape your mom.
inappropriate.
I'm gonna fuck your mom. Your mom's a slut, stupid bitch ass nigga. I'm gonna fuck your mom, bitch ass Christian. Fuck your mom. Fuck God. I jerk my dick with the Bible. Fuck your God. I jerk my dick with the Bible. I jerk my dick with the Bible.
Welcome.
What's up?
What's up?
Not much, yeah. So your point that atheism is irrational.
Uh-huh.
The funny thing, we've actually debated before. I don't know if you know that.
I believe it.
We debated a while ago about this, and I mentioned that about like a lot of things in the Bible that were incorrect or contradictions, and you, for example, how the mass, the crimes committed, and you started talking about how I should be thanking you for America saving my country in World War II. You started yelling. I'm not even joking. You started yelling. You yelled in my face about that like 6 times, and then, I'm not even British. That's the funny thing, and yeah.
What are you?
That's something you did like a couple months back.
What are you?
Huh?
What are you?
I'm originally from Bosnia.
Oh, okay. Where are you?
Yeah.
Are you in England now?
Yeah, we've lived in England since the war in the 90s, but yeah.
Well, same difference, whatever, man.
But it's not, is it? Because I'm not originally English, and you also started talking about how the America saved my country because I was mentioning genocide in the Bible. And then you started yelling, shouldn't you be thanking me? And then kicked me and played a Mario sound effect.
Right. Like, I mean, don't you see the point though? You'd be speaking German right now if it wasn't for America saving.
No, but the bad thing about what you said is it's correct, but the two bad things are it was completely unrelated to what I was saying, and it was also it was also not you that did it, and you kept saying, shouldn't I be thanking you for America saving you? But it wasn't you that said that. And you just
But like, you were talking about like this war in the Bible, and you're like, "Oh, this is so bad." But like that,
I didn't say. I said genocide in the Bible, not war. But yeah,
you can't say that word.
Sorry, my bad. Mass. What?
G side. Say G side.
Okay, the G side in the Bible. Yeah, I mentioned that.
Right, but we G-sided the Yahtzees, and that was a good thing, right? Because if we didn't G-side the Yahtzees, you'd be speaking German.
Okay, well, I don't. Do you mean the Japanese because you dropped the atomic bomb on them?
We destroyed Yahtzee culture and we made it illegal. We G-sided the Yahtzees.
Well, America was actually a country that exonerated a third of the Yahtzees after the war. Britain did 90%, and France did about 28%. So, were you exonerated a third of former Yahtzees? So I don't understand.
We G-sided the Yahtzees. That was.
But then you exonerated a third of them.
So G-side isn't always bad, right?
What?
It was good to G-side the Yahtzees, right?
Well, I mean, first, I don't really think you did, but
yeah, we did.
You joined the war and you started, helping, and then you dropped the atomic on the Japanese twice, and then the Nazis gave up because you joined. The Japanese eventually surrendered after the atomic, but then you exonerated a third of former Yahtzees after the war.
What is this? History for dummies? Like, what is this?
This is facts, actually, what I'm saying.
Not facts.
You exonerated a third of them after the war. And Britain did about 90% of them. France was about 25.
We G-sided Yahtzee culture. You weren't allowed to. They're like.
I'm not saying you didn't, but I'm saying that you, after the war, you just exonerated a third of the former ones.
No, we persecuted Yahtzees.
Yeah, and then when they were took to court, as I just said, Britain exonerated the Soviets. Started, implanting their own ideology. Britain exonerated about 90%. I have no idea why that many. And then America exonerated about a third. And France, like a quarter, I think.
What does that have to do with anything?
Huh?
What does that have to do with anything?
Because you're saying that I should be thanking you, and then you were saying that you G-sided them, and you were saying that you did all this, but you literally exonerated a third of them. Anyway,
That doesn't change that. Does that like dispute the fact that we G-sided them?
No, but you were saying that you G-sided them, yes, but you were saying how... What?
We G-sided a bad culture because it was bad.
Yeah.
And that was good because that was bad for the world. They were harming lots of people and taking over countries.
I think you underestimate how much I know about a bad culture G-siding, because if you know anything about the G-side in Bosnia, it was, pretty similar.
And where did you guys came to America to seek refuge?
Well, we what do you mean by you guys?
So ridiculous. It's like you should be a Christian. Why don't you thank the Christians that like your ass? Welcome. Hello.
Okay. So I heard you say to that guy, he should be thanking America, correct?
Yeah.
Because you're the greatest city and you sit the bride of Christ.
America is God's country.
Yeah, you think that, right? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, so now this is Revelation 16. No idea. Revelation, chapter 16, verse.
This will be good.
17, okay. It says, and the 7 angels poured out his veil into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven for the throne, saying, it is done. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake, and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the city of the nation fell, and great Babylon came into remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of his fieriness of his wrath. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not founded. And there fell upon men great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. And men blasphemed God because of the plagues of the hail, for the plagues thereof were exceedingly great.
Amen.
Now, Mystery Babylon. So when we go find a cross-reference to that, okay, it tells you that Mystery Babylon sits a queen. No sword will come upon us. No destruction will come upon us. Okay? Doesn't that sound a lot like America? We sit the bride of Christ. We are the bride of Christ. No evil will come upon us. We are the greatest nation in the world, the most proudest country, considering in Isaiah 28, it tells you that the drunkards of Ephraim are going to be full of pride.
Okay. So do you have...
And it's where Judah and Ephraim dwell together. Now, Judah is the Jews, which they dwell in America. And Ephraim is the northern kingdom, which was scattered to the 4 corners of the earth until the last days. The Bible also tells you in Mystery Babylon dwells a mixed multitude of nations from all different kindreds and tongues and languages.
Brutality. You weak, pathetic fool.
Oh my gosh. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Babbling, man. He's just yapping.
Huh?
What would you like to say?
Um, just to debate you on atheism is irrational.
Oh my gosh, how are you gonna do that?
Huh?
How are you gonna prove atheism?
I never said I prove atheism. I'm proving your point wrong.
Well, if you can't prove atheism, then it's just
Nobody can prove it. Nobody can prove Christianity. That's what.
well, I prove Christianity all the time. I proved it like 10 times today.
Uh-huh. Well, that's not what I'm trying to talk about. Atheism is irrational. Why do you believe that?
Because it's a contradiction. They ignore evidence, and it's just a blind belief without reason.
What's the contradiction?
If atheism was true, atheism wouldn't be true.
What?
If atheism were true, then atheism would be false. So it's a contradiction.
How?
Because if atheism were true, there would be no standard by which to say something's true or false. So then it wouldn't.
Did you realize that atheism isn't a belief system?
I realize that. I realize it's an ontological claim about existence, that there's no creator-creature distinction.
You just said that if atheism is true, it can't that it can't be true.
Right. Yeah.
But what is true then? Because if it's not a belief system, then what can be true about it? If you get what I'm trying to say.
It would make truth impossible. Your starting point, your starting assumption would make truth impossible.
And what starting assumption would Christianity have?
That there's a necessary mind creator that's responsible for all things, explains all things.
Okay. And atheism has science that explains most things.
Right, but science can't even explain itself, so science ends up getting you nowhere.
What do you mean it can't explain itself?
Science can't. It relies on things to be true that it can't prove, like logic. Science can't prove logic.
It relies on logic, which it can't prove.
Yeah.
And how do you prove logic?
We would need God's revelation.
Okay, so show me how you prove logic using God's revelation. Because if science can't do it, and you're Christian can, then how?
If you asked me how old you were, and I guessed your age, and let's say I'm correct, that wouldn't be knowledge, right? Because I just accidentally happened to be right.
Well, you would be assuming you would were right in front of me. You'd be looking at me, and you'd assume, or by my voice, for example, you'd assume. Oh no, you'd assume, but you'd see, you hear my voice, you see what I look like. And
I know you're not 6 years old or something, right?
Exactly, because of my voice. It's not you have knowledge because you can hear my voice.
But I wouldn't have any reason to think you'd have a wide range of ages, and I wouldn't have any reason to pick one over the other.
Yeah, but I'm not, as you just said, I'm not 6 years old because you can hear my voice. That is a knowledge that you have because you are on TikTok. Because
if I guess your age and I'm correct, okay, let's not use age then. Let's use
because it doesn't work.
Okay, you have a bucket full of ping pong balls or something.
Okay.
I guess how many ping pong balls are in the bucket, and I'm correct. That wasn't knowledge because it was just I was accidentally correct.
Well, you have an already presupposed idea of a bucket, so you can, you're really you might be able to
cooperative, really.
Okay, well, by that, so do you see the bucket, or are you just hearing about it?
Are you gonna be if you're gonna be uncooperative, I'm just gonna kick you because you're being stupid.
I'm asking questions about what you're saying.
What I'm saying isn't it's not complicated. You have a bucket of ping pong balls. I guess the number of ping pong balls. I'm correct, but it was an accident. I don't have knowledge. I didn't have any reason to think you had that number
Well, you did because you know there's a number of ping pong
Thanks for
balls. You
coming.
threw out a number and it worked.
Yes. Well,
You've
hey,
been told.
hey, when you're burning in hell, remember me, okay?
All too easy.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi. I want to talk about atheism is irrational. I want to address that point.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Yeah, I can't hear you when you switch.
all right, so what's your understanding of the word atheism? If you had to explain it to somebody who had no idea what that meant, how would you explain it to them?
I have a lack of understanding of atheism. Understanding.
So if I don't understand physics, does that make me an atheist towards it?
I'm an atheist towards talking to you in the future. God. Welcome.
Yeah, what's up?
What's up?
I would say the one that I would want to approach is Christianity is objectively proven.
Right.
But before that, if possible, I would like to ask, what is the main point of the channel?
The main point of the channel is the debasement of atheist pride.
Debasement of atheist pride?
Yeah, I'm trying to humble atheists. I think they're really arrogant, and I want to humble them because God's obvious, and they should be ashamed of themselves for not believing in God.
So there's no attempt to lead anybody towards the God that you believe is to be true and all
well,
those things.
To accept the Christian God, you have to be humble, and if you're arrogant, then you're never going to accept Jesus. And so I'm trying to humble people.
Are you humble?
Well, I think, yeah, I'm probably the most humble person on TikTok.
And you believe that your humility is showing through while you try to debase atheists?
Yes.
And your approach here is in some way a net positive for Christians and people who are theists who believe in a loving God.
That's what the reviews tell me. I've heard people say that I'm doing a good thing.
Reviews from other Christians?
Yeah.
Have you heard anybody who is an atheist prior to, or even agnostic, who has said, hey, because of your debasing atheists and your humility, it has shown me the love of Christ, or something like that?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Right, because it's not happening.
Okay.
Christians will agree with you because they have an agreement with what you're saying, and they don't agree with the atheists. So they will automatically tell you what you're doing is a good thing. But what you're doing,
You're saying
I can't prove it, is most likely a net negative.
Are you a Christian?
I am. So I'm a Christian that's telling you that, in my opinion, your false humility and your attempt to debase a group of people is not helping. And it's more likened to maybe what the Pharisees were doing, which they thought was a positive thing, but as history would show, it's not a positive thing. It might be positive for your bank account, and it might be positive for your following and your ego, but it is certainly not leading anybody to Christ to be arrogant and to be exactly as Christ was not.
I think you should read Romans 2. I think you're out of line.
And what does Romans 2 say? That would make me underline about what God says about humility, and the meek shall inherit the earth, and love and kindness, and loving thy neighbor as thyself, and all the other things about love, and how Jesus approached. Did Jesus approach?
You, therefore, have no excuse. You who pass judgment on someone else, for at whatever point you judge another, you are condemning yourself.
Are you
Because
judging
you
others?
who
Are you
pass
judging
judgment,
others?
I'm talking. I'm reading the scripture. Please don't interrupt the word of God.
All right.
Because you who pass judgment do the same things. Now we know that God's judgment against those who do such things is based on truth. So when you, a mere human being, pass judgment on them, yet do the same things, do you think you will escape God's judgment? Or do you show contempt for the riches of his kindness, forbearance, and patience, not realizing that God's kindness is intended to lead you to repentance?
So you're saying that I'm the one that's passing judgment?
I'm saying you're a hypocrite and you're going to go to hell, so you should stop doing this.
What does the Bible say about judging others, and who is able to judge others?
Well, when you're burning, remember Romans 2.
Mm-hmm. So
You will die, mortal.
Hello.
No.
It is my third time on here in half an hour. Just letting you know that.
Have you repented?
You know, I'm getting closer. I just need to debate one more time.
Okay.
So, Christianity is objectively proven. How?
Yes, if knowledge, then God. We have knowledge, therefore God exists.
So, okay, so if we have knowledge, God exists.
Yeah, because knowledge requires things like identity over time, uniformity of nature, causality. Only Christian worldview explains those things uniquely.
Okay, so here's a question. What about the people before God? They had no knowledge before Jesus came down?
There was if you remember the story, God is eternal. There's no before God.
Okay, but wasn't the whole thing with Jesus that God was revealing himself and dying for their sins? So the people before that, they had no knowledge?
There's no before Jesus, though.
There was
fact. It's not the fact. The fact is, we live in God's world. If God doesn't create the world, and ensures like the coherence of knowledge, then we don't have knowledge.
Okay, right. But you just said that without God, there is no knowledge. Okay,
Yeah.
But there were many people before Jesus came down. There were people when he came down. The people were there, so there were people.
You remember the Garden of Eden? Jesus was in the Garden of Eden.
Where?
Where? He was talking to Adam. He was chilling with Adam and Eve. That's who they're talking to. That's Jesus.
The snake?
No. They're talking when it's saying like God. They're talking to God in the garden. That's Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does that have to do with what I just said?
There's no before God. There's no before. God's eternal. He's uncreated. He's at the beginning.
God is eternal, but there were people before Jesus came down, and you just said without God, there's no knowledge. So those people had no knowledge.
Feel the power of Shao Kahn.
My God, dude. It's like, do these people have ears? Like, what is going on? I feel like I'm debating a wall or something. Like, what is this?
What's the argument for this premise?
Well, it's a argument about the possibility of arguing at all. So has the way I argue it, it has two moves that we make. So depending upon who the argument is against, it's an impossibility to the contrary. And then the positive side of the argument is the Christian metaphysic and its claims.
I mean, so you're just like not talking to anybody in particular. You're just like kind of writing.
No, the argument is always, but by the very necessity of the argument, it's an argument of comparison of paradigms. So it has to have some argument that I'm comparing against, some position, some worldview. So what's your position?
Well, like, look, suppose that I had a position, you showed it the false, that like wouldn't help to show the premise is true. That's kind of why
that's why I just said that.
Supposing that you're not talking
I just said it had two. I just said it has two parts. That's what I just said. I said it's not. I just said it's not just a matter of demonstrating the impossibility of the contrary. It's also the positive of positing and arguing for the Christian.
Right. So we make a positive claim for Christianity, right? So we say the Christian metaphysics can account for knowledge because, like, we have an omniscient being as a source of knowledge. He designs our mind, he designs the world, and because he designs everything, it makes sense that we have like access to knowledge. Okay. And then wait, let's assume any like the atheist metaphysic that we're a cosmic accident. There's no intention behind the universe. There's no God. Well, your mind is now the product of like evolution and molecules in motion. And there's no reason based on evolution to think that your mind can, like the mental categories, accurately track the physical categories, that your concepts in your head are correspond to like the physical objects that the concepts represent. Yet we live in a world where clearly concepts do correspond to reality because we can conceptualize like a bridge mathematically, and we could say like based on math that the bridge can hold a max load of X, and then we see in a physical world when we build the bridge and we exceed the max load that the bridge collapses according to math. So we see a correspondence between like these conceptual mental categories and these physical concrete categories.
And metaphysic.
Right, so
then like God explains the connection, right? Without God, there's no reason to think they would connect.
that would be what I'm asking for. Is like, what is it that tells you that these kind, like the possibility of knowledge necessitates the Christian metaphysic, and kind of
the thing I said at the beginning, which is that the transcendental, the thing I said at the beginning, which is that the transcendental categories necessitate a certain type of world, a certain type of view of time and space, history, the self, etc., which the Christian metaphysic gives an account for.
How is this telling? Well, like if there's the possibility of knowledge, then Orthodox Christianity is true.
Because the Christian metaphysic and orthodoxy is unique, and it deals with every one of those transcendental categories.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it is unique.
Let me rephrase that. I don't mean to say that it's true because it's unique, but I'm saying that the type of metaphysic, the type of theology that's offered is an answer to a lot of those problems that you have in worldviews that don't have that that theology, that metaphysic. For example, it solves the problem of the one and many. It solves the problems of universals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All those typical kinds of problems are not a problem in this paradigm. So it doesn't fall prey to foundational critiques that most worldviews fall prey to.
So you're saying, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You can continue.
That's fine. Go ahead.
So are you just saying like that all these transcendental categories you might fill in for why Orthodox Christianity provides some account for them, and no other account successfully provides, or no other worldview successfully provides them?
Yeah.
But that's kind of just to say premise 3 again. Like that's the issue is I'm not seeing why I'm not like being given any reason to think that.
To think what? That only Christianity does that?
Yeah.
Well, you can demonstrate that. So it's going to be, first of all, the impossibility of the contrary, depending upon which argument you're going against. And if you're saying, well, maybe there's a position out there that we don't know that can answer that, well, then at that point, I can just say, well, there's only a certain number of moves that you can make in any basic starting point for metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. There's not an infinite number of worldviews and positions out there. There's actually only a few. And you could say, is knowledge objective or is it subjective? Are ethics subjective or are they relative? Is reality teleological or disteleological? And any way you go on some of these fundamental either ors is going to determine the rest of your set of beliefs. So I don't have to refute all worldviews is the point.
I'm fine with saying, presumably through that process, you would refute all the other worldviews, no?
No, I'm saying I don't have to give an exhaustive refutation of an infinite number of worldviews if I can refute all the other worldviews in that way, exactly.
I'm not committed to saying that there are an infinite number of worldviews, or even if there were, that you couldn't do the thing you just described, where maybe...
Okay, then if I don't have to do an infinite number of series of every worldview, if I can start with the foundational premises of, metaphysics and epistemology or ethics, then that's the point of the transcendental categories, that they only work, they only cohere, they only make sense, they're only justified in a Christian paradigm. That's the point.
Yeah, I get that that's the premise, and then you're saying the way that you would motivate that is you would show, look, there's a kind of finite amount of permutations of ways that you answer certain fundamental questions, and the Orthodox Christian worldview answers this finite set of fundamental questions in a way that can account for all these transcendental categories, and every other worldview answers these questions in a different way than that, which doesn't account for these transcendental
correct,
categories.
and not just.
This is Jay Dyer talking to Amdir.
That it doesn't account, but actually the answers that they give actually make knowledge impossible.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if you can lay that out.
Yeah, so again, you mean going through the basic fundamental questions? I mean, we can re-ask the questions that I just asked. So is reality teleological or disteleological, right? There's no, they're like, you got to pick on that, right? So it's either meaningful at a universal scale, grand scale, or it's not.
And then you want to say that,
and if it is meaningful, then now we're going to...
There's only one way you can answer this question that would allow for some transcendental category?
How you answer that question will then dictate the other things that follow from that, right? So if you say that it's teleological, that it has meaning and so forth, then you're going to have, then there are things like intentionality and purpose, meaning to history and so forth. So it's going to necessitate other beliefs.
We can kind of give the argument that only Orthodox Christianity answers these fundamental questions in that way, and that no other worldview does.
See,
the existence of God is necessary to debate, so it's proven by the necessity, right? Because you can't debate without God.
You cut out there at the beginning. Say that again.
I'm wondering what the argument is that only Orthodox Christianity answers these questions in a way that kind of allows for the possibility of knowledge, and none of the other worldviews answer the questions in a way which does allow for the possibility of knowledge.
So again, we would walk through different versions, different steps, different takes. So why don't we use your worldview as an example?
He doesn't want to.
You're cutting out.
See, he doesn't want to put his worldview on the table because he's the tag argument is about being open and honest with your confirmation bias, but the atheist or the non-Christian doesn't ever want to admit their confirmation bias. They want to deny their confirmation bias and get everyone to just assume that their confirmation bias is the correct confirmation bias. But why should I believe your confirmation? Yeah, Danny is a joke.
Not Orthodox Christianity, because we've not showed that premise is true. Do you see the problem?
You cut out. Can you say it again?
Say, suppose that I give this contrary, we walk through, and it turns out my contrary does not account for the possibility of knowledge. Now, there's a question about the next step. Do I accept Orthodox Christianity? No, I mean, I'll just reject my worldview and go looking for another. But that's why I'm asking, like,
Right, but because we've chosen one element of the worldview, it doesn't, like, the rest of the worldview follows, right? So just because we're choosing one element of it, it doesn't follow that there's an infinite number of other possible worldviews that can solve that dilemma. So the point is that that's just one element that we've chosen to walk through. We could pick another topic in epistemology and walk through that and get to the same conclusion. So that's the point of the various basics that we could start with.
Yeah, but I mean, unless we sit here and, like, you talk me out of every other worldview.
No. And now that's why you already granted that I don't have to refute every possible worldview. So
Sorry,
now
I
you're.
just mean like every other answer to this kind of finite set of questions. That's what I mean there.
Well, I mean, that's why it's a lot better if we actually posit what your worldview is, which you don't seem to want to do.
Well, I mean, we can do that. I'm just saying that then, like, if my worldview's
See, they never want to put their position on the table. All these people want to do is criticize religion. Well, have you ever thought about criticizing your non-religious position? They never defend their position. These people are just smoke and mirrors sophists.
false and you haven't answered the original question, then
That's
like,
why
my
there's
next
the positive
move is to
step.
jump
I
forward
already
towards
answered that. That's why
Christianity.
there's the positive step, because Christianity doesn't just account for one basic metaphysical premise. It accounts for all the transcendental categories that you need that all go together. That's why it's a argument for all of them working together, as I said. And not every worldview can account for those things, because again, I think if you understand what those things are, what the transcendental categories are, there aren't other worldviews that can account for those things.
Well, I mean, okay, so like I'm willing to do the like worldview thing if you want to ask me like one of these kind of what you consider fundamental questions, but just refer back to what I said.
Jesus will come down from.
I said before, like without some argument for that premise, then I don't know how this exercise is going to get us like Orthodox Christianity.
Because the argument is specifically that Orthodox Christianity provides.
It's like Amdir is so low tier, dude. Like, what is this crap?
The necessary preconditions for the transcendental categories. The transcendental categories are the preconditions for the possibility of knowledge at all.
And then like talking.
Like, what do they think? Like, just sitting here being like, I don't understand. What is this? And how does this work? Like, what does this accomplish? Like, not understanding things.
To talking to me and then like showing my view as false wouldn't like make that premise true, right?
Right.
He already. Oh crap! He already went over that.
Are you sick and tired of lugging around the extra weight and nothing seems to work?
The proposition that you're proposing is out.
Right, and that's why
he already went over that. He said, yes, if I just say argue to the impossibility of the contrary, that doesn't prove my position. That's why I have to give the positive. He said it's two-part, and it's like Amdir keeps ignoring this. There's two parts, positive case for Christianity, and then we argue the impossibility of the contrary. So the positive case is the Christian metaphysic. Is that what they're not getting? So we're arguing for the Christian metaphysics is the positive case for Christianity. Then the impossibility of the contrary is if we assume any other non-Christian metaphysic, incoherence ensues, absurdity, reductio ad absurdum.
Other transcendental categories are part of the discussion and part of the debate, even though as finite human beings, we have to choose one thing to talk about at a time. I mean, right.
But like this exercise isn't anything in support of that premise. You agree with that?
In support of which premise?
That necessarily for the possibility of knowledge that implies.
Well, it's a step. It's a step in the process or in the argument in terms of how I make it. So that's why I said that possibility of the contrary doesn't necessarily mean that my position is true. That's why it also includes the additional arguments for the rest of the worldview, the metaphysics, and so forth.
Well, I mean, if you accept classical logic, impossibility of the contrary would just imply that your worldview is true.
Well, it would imply that if you look at like modern epistemic debates, even impossibility, even retorsion doesn't necessarily prove my position. So,
I mean, classical logic has like negation introduction. So if like not P implies Q
Yeah,
and
the
not
problem
Q,
is that we're
that
talking.
implies
Yeah, but
P.
but this is addressed in Quine. This is addressed in modern epistemology. So you're trying to play a game here. I know what you're saying.
Wait, what was addressed in Quine's?
That just because a position appears to be irrational or impossible doesn't prove that the other system is necessarily the case. So that's
No, only if all of them, like if all of them are, right? So if all of them except for one are impossible, then like given classical logic, the one that's not impossible is true.
okay. But
Just given classical
but you're
logic.
misunderstanding, right? But this isn't the particular argument here is metalogical. It's not an argument about first order logic. It's an argument that is about the possibility of doing logic. So the only way to argue those kinds of positions that are meta are going to be pre-logical. They're still using logic. So it doesn't mean that because we're using logic, it's invalid. It just means that it's an argument about the use of logic itself. So it's not going to be done the exact same way that normal argumentation or logical problems are done. And so
I mean, the syllogism I have in front of me is just using like basic first.
I understand that, but a syllogism that's using that form, it also
See, but it's the content of the syllogism, because the syllogism is about paradigms. So that's why it's like meta. It's about the content.
depends on what you stick in there. So the fact that it's using a syllogism does not mean that it's just a first order problem, because we're talking about logic itself. So it's metalogical.
Well, I mean, metalogic has to do with like soundness and completeness of a formal system. This is
Right.
just an argument for the proposition.
No,
that
I'm not.
necessarily
It's about the possibility of logic at all is what we're talking about.
It's just using first order propositional logic. But I mean, this isn't important.
It is important because you're trying to collapse the type of argument that it is into a type of argument that it isn't. That's why.
So the atheists will do this a lot too, of the Phil Bros. So tag is the transcendental argument for God is metalogical, and they'll try to critique it as if it's logical. That you got to watch out for that. It's about the possibility of logic itself, not about like is this like does this does the Christian worldview, is it proven by some logical inference rule? No, the Christian worldview is proven as the foundation to have a logical inference rule.
Matters. So I know what metalogic is.
Yeah, but this isn't a metalogic argument.
It is.
What do you think a metalogic argument is?
It's an argument if we pick logic as the transcendental category, this would be a metalogical argument about the possibility of logic at all. How do we know logic is even logical? In that way, it is a metalogical argument.
Metalogic has to do with like the possibility of logic itself. Like how do we have a logical system?
Sorry, the conclusion of the one I'm talking about is just necessarily the Orthodox Christian worldview is true.
Yeah, but this is prior to logic. It's prior to logic.
Well, if it's prior to logic, then like I could just accept all the premises and reject the conclusion.
No, so again, that's why you don't. That's a category mistake. That's a category mistake.
It's a category mistake to say this is a metalogical argument.
No, it's not.
Just
No, it's not.
Modal logic.
The fact that the problem that the form of the argument that you're looking at from the Discord, right? I understand that's modal logic. I understand what you're talking about. But what matters is what you stick in there into the various, right, premises, right? And so the fact that we're talking about, if the referent is outside of or prior to logic, that doesn't make it still first order. It's beyond that.
If you stick something different into the content, it doesn't change the formal system that you're working on.
If it's about logic itself, then it does, because it's beyond that.
No,
it's metalogic. Yes, it does.
That's like an elementary mistake.
No,
this isn't even an important point.
Because the transcendental argument is about it's prior to the doing of logic.
Well, I mean, you can say that, but
no, I'm not just saying that. That is the argument.
That's the whole point of a transcendental argument, is about foundational beliefs. So the foundations that make logic possible. Duh.
Yeah,
So you're going to keep giggling. Why are you giggling?
But all that I'm saying is that changing the content of an argument doesn't change the formal system. It doesn't change the rules of the formal system.
It does if it's about the formal systems themselves.
Then you wouldn't be giving it in this form. Oh my! So
You just gave me an example from the Discord. I don't have it in front of me, and I don't have a problem saying that. We can talk about formal argumentation for. I said X is a necessary condition of Y therefore X. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So does that mean that if I say that this is an argument about logic itself, I can't do that?
No, you can still do that because
Right.
you're still working in the same formal system.
No, this is Gödel's incompleteness theorem is about this very point, which is
No, it's
that
not.
yes, it is. Systems go outside of themselves. I know you know. Yeah, I'm sure you do. So when systems go outside of themselves, it's a metalogical problem. It's no longer a problem that's within the system. So if we're talking about a transcendental argument about the possibility of logic, then it's no longer a first order type of argument. Even if you stick it into X is a necessary condition of Y therefore X, it is no longer just a first order problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, Gödel's incompleteness theorem doesn't say that, but
Yes, it does. It says that sets appeal outside of themselves, and so there never is a complete set. Yes, it does.
It says that if a formal system is consistent, then it's not complete. That's what.
So what is your world? Yeah, exactly. Incompleteness theorem, right? And so he's arguing against Bertrand Russell that you could have an exhaustive set theory, right? That's totally comprehensive. Yes, it is. It is an argument against Bertrand. Yes, it is. It is an argument against Bertrand Russell's exhaustive view of set theory.
Well, it wasn't. No, you're because.
So what is your worldview? What's your worldview? Let's have
Amger's getting wrecked.
the argument about your worldview, because that's how the transcendental argument works.
If you're saying, yeah,
Okay, so he's not going to present his worldview. He's not going to
we can
present.
move on and do the worldview comparison. I'm like,
What's your worldview?
so, my worldview about what? Like,
What is your worldview? Are you? Come on. Are you an
my
atheist?
worldview about what? Right?
Are you an atheist?
My worldview about what?
Yeah.
Okay. So is all of reality reducible to matter? Are you a materialist?
I'm not sure what you mean by matter.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean by matter. Look, as soon as we start talking about his position, oh no, I don't know what would mean. What the would mean?
I'm skeptical of the material distinction.
This gay laugh. We're moving on.
Oh wait. Welcome. Oh, okay. Great.
We're
moving on.
You're being mean. Did I not tell everybody at the beginning of this that if you won't answer the question, I will keep bringing it back until you answer the question? Today is not for people that have called in a million times. Please, if you are coming on, it's because you take issue or disagree. So remember, it's disagreement day. I mean, do I have to write it on a whiteboard? Would that help people out? What we're saying here?
No. Get it.
I thought I had my whiteboard in here. Where is it at? Whiteboard Summer, let me get the whiteboard. And what did we see? The same old thing. Machine gun blow past. Let's blow past into other topics. Nope. No lazy atheism allowed here. All knowledge that's objective comes from sense data. Okay? Can we all see this? See that? This is a proposition that makes what's called a universal claim. See that word all there? That's a universal quantifier that is making a statement about all states of human knowledge. All human knowledge that is objective comes from sense data. Okay, that is a very strong claim when we stop and pause and think about the claim. Okay? So this is the question that I'm asking to this person. See the brackets there? The brackets are bracketing that proposition. I want to know where in sense data that proposition is. Because this claim here, will it include the claim itself, you see? In other words, if all objective knowledge comes from sense data, this is an objective knowledge claim. It must therefore also be somewhere in sense data. Of course, this universal claim is in no one's individual sense data. Therefore, it's a fundamental contradiction for basic bitch empiricism.
Basic bitch empiricism doesn't work. It's a contradiction. But all these people come up here and they're like, basic bitch empiricism is the way. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, he had a whiteboard. It's a whiteboard summer. What would you like to say?
Christianity is objectively proven. Is that
Yes.
that's your assertion? I disagree. I disagree with that, but I suppose it's your proposition. So can you? Do we start with your explaining to me why that is clearly the case to you?
Right, because I could take any fact, like the fact that you're like talking or arguing with me, right? And I say like God's going to be necessary for that fact.
Okay, that's and it's up to you to explain that how that works, and then I respond. Is that the way we're going?
Sure, like to talk, there has to be like some consistency in the physical world, because without consistency, every time you say a word, it would sound different. Like I couldn't say car. Without consistency, every time I try to say car, it might sound like house or roof or Coca-Cola, or it could sound like anything.
Okay.
So, in a world where God, by his plan, there's like this consistency in the world according to God's plan that explains the consistency. But if you deny God, you have like chaos, and there's no reason to think there would be any consistency or order in the physical world that would be necessary for you to talk. So you talking proves God.
Okay. So, whereas if I approach it saying that we have consistency in the world because things are bound together, all of the starting from quarks and going all the way up, and so it's not that everything happens randomly, incessantly, but in fact it is a function of the complicated connection of quarks and atoms and molecules that exist, and we.
That's a lie.
Again.
But that's you can't prove that there'd be order in the world. You'd have no proof for that. You're just saying it.
Well, and that's fairness. I mean, this could be just an instant where we all think, or I all think, that everything is coherent, and then in the next instant it's going to fall apart. However, what we have is, and the conclusions that we come to, are based upon the information that we have, and everything indicates that molecules kind of hang together. So everything in here are the things that we have observed, or the information that we've gained from other people who have observed this. And so that's how we know that things hang together. But you're right, there's a theoretical possibility that this could just be an instance where those things hang together and then everything disappears. Absolutely. However, the best we can see.
No, it's not about it's not about the best or the theoretical possibility. You necessarily, there has to be this like order in the world for you to talk. You're talking, and so it's like necessarily there's a God to explain that order. There's no way out of that. Because there's no way for.
I actually, but that's just it. You have said, well, that it has to be coherent, therefore God, and that's a big leap to say. Right. We have what we understand the way we understand the universe to be is that it came at an event which is we can't see really behind it, where a singularity resulted in a huge amount of mass being in the universe, and this universe expanding.
If I'm talking,
we have a reasonable command of everything that happened, from a little bit after that to now, in terms of how all those individual
Okay, but what you seem to be going past the point. The point I made is that every time you say a word, you're borrowing from my position because your position can't explain your ability to say words.
I
That's
can
the
say
problem.
words because I'm a bag of atoms, which has a brain made into molecules.
Yeah,
One of
but
that big piles of
okay,
molecules is my. Mhm.
but you can't explain it. That's you keep lying that you can, but you can't.
In the concept of explain, given we can look at how everything works in my mouth, it works in the how my body uses the air that's around me. All these things we can examine and draw evidence from what we're seeing. So that is how we explain how we work.
You're not you're not understanding.
Well, no, I'm disagreeing.
This is going. Well, this is going. It seems like this is going over your head.
No, but again, let's be polite, right? I'm not saying, I'm not accusing you of not being capable of understanding this, and let's be pleasant to each other as opposed to, just saying things like that because it's not particularly helpful. So I can tell you that what we know of the world is what we get through our senses, and all the other information that we have come to conclude based upon our senses and the senses that other people have used, all those things. So that's how we have this. If you're talking about
But that destroys knowledge. So
how is it?
if all you have is like reason and your senses to know things, you don't know anything. Because for example, like when you touch a hot stove and you burn your hand, you think, well, in the future, I better not touch a hot stove because I'll burn my hand. So
Yeah.
that relies on Christianity because you believe that the future resembles the past. But that only makes sense if God has a plan for the future to resemble the past. Without God's plan, you have no reason to think the future will resemble the past.
The
That's the
future has
problem.
resembled the past in every previous occasion that I've been alive. I draw
Right.
that conclusion.
Well, that would be begging the question, though. So
No, it would be my observation is that things have things.
now you're bickering because that is begging the question. That's not a valid. It's not valid to say that.
I'm not sure that you understand what the word begging the question means here.
Thanks for coming. Welcome.
What's up, bro?
What up, dog? What you
All
got?
right, so what's good, man? So um, you think Christianity? That's what you follow?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna just bring up this one verse, right?
Okay.
In Deuteronomy, it says, "I will." What do you mean when it said that I will send you into a foreign land where you will worship wood and stone, and your forefathers did not know? What do you think he meant by that? In the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy.
I have no idea, dude. I'd have to look it up. Like I don't have the Bible memorized, so.
Just look it up real quick on Google.
Okay. Are you a Christian?
No, I hate Christianity.
Then why would I want? Why are we doing Bible study if you don't even believe this crap?
No. I'm just, what I'm saying, look it up. Look up the verse.
Why don't you prove atheism or something?
Look up the verse. I just want you to look it up.
What is the verse? What is it? Do you have the verse? What is it?
Hold on, I'm a
If for real, like, oh my god, dude, atheists.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, or somebody else can look it up. It's Deuteronomy. It's in Deuteronomy. I'm not sure what the verse, like the chapter was, but it's in Deuteronomy. You can look it up yourself.
This is just insane. I can't even. I'm gonna get banned if I talk to you for ableism.
Hello.
Welcome.
Um,
Is there anything that you specifically wanted to debate?
Well, there's 5 topics here.
Okay. We can go with abortion and child sacrifice.
You want to debate that?
Hmm?
Okay. I don't
Okay.
know how you would debate against that. Like, that's pretty obvious.
I mean, would you consider an unformed chicken a real chicken that you can like eat and like feed and nourish and things like that?
Yeah, it would be a chicken. Yeah.
So like when an egg is first fertilized and it hasn't formed yet inside within the chicken egg, and it has no eyes, no wings, no nothing, that you consider that a chicken.
Is it fertilized? No, did you say?
Oh, it is fertilized, it just hasn't formed yet.
That's a chicken, sure, yeah.
No, it's not a chicken. It's an egg.
Are you a Christian or are you a chicken?
Neither. I'm a human being with morals of my own.
You gotta be a Christian to be brave and have courage.
That's not true whatsoever. I feel like Christianity are the meekest people.
So true.
Thank you for agreeing with me, even though I just disagreed with you.
The human life starts at conception.
No, it actually doesn't.
Scientifically, it does.
Scientifically, it doesn't. Scientifically, human life starts the moment your heart starts beating. That's not at the moment of conception. Because technically, at the moment of conception, you have no thoughts, no feelings, no limbs, no ability to. You can't even live outside of your mother's being. You know what I'm saying? The human embryo is more like not a feces. What am I talking about? It's more like a parasite than it is a human. It has more, characteristics of a parasite than it does a human being.
Your argument's like a feces.
Okay, so is your entire religion. But I don't.
That was a good clap back.
Huh?
That was a nice clap back.
Oh, thank you.
That's pretty good.
I try so hard. So with that being said, do you think that child sacrifice is morally wrong?
Yeah, I think it's wrong. Like these preborn babies, they don't have a voice and no one's defending them, and it's like crazy that we're just unaliving these people.
Right, but like even before they're unalive, they still don't have a voice. But that wasn't the question I asked you. What I asked you was, do you think child sacrifice is wrong?
Of course.
That's a yes or no question. Okay. So do you think that it was wrong when Jesus wiped out not Jesus, sorry, God wiped out a bunch of innocent children in the flood, or when he told Abraham to go kill his own son, or when he took Job's children just to give him extra because of a bet he made with Satan? Do you think
He told Abraham not to kill Isaac or unalive, sorry. Unalive Isaac. Yeah, we have to say the TikTok words. And when God unalived all the babies, like in Egypt, he unalived the firstborn, or actually, the firstborn isn't necessarily babies; it could be adults. I think potentially there. And then where else? Like, oh yeah, the flood. He unalived babies. He's doing that because he loves us, right? So you got to remember that God does everything because he loves you unconditionally, and he's doing that because it's for the best for the world.
interesting take? Okay, I would like to move forward with that. You say that God loves us, and without any standards or well, you said what was the specific word that you used?
Conditional love.
Unconditional. Beautiful. Do you think that unconditional love is what? Okay. We'll backtrack to the very beginning. Would you say that God is all-knowing?
Yes.
Do you think he created everything?
Yes.
Okay. With that being said, if God loves us unconditionally, right? No matter what we do, no matter how we feel, live, breathe, whatever. Why do we get sent to an eternity of suffering? I'll just use that word.
That's a good question. I guess like it makes the most sense. Like, don't you think there's a lot of like horrible people that deserve to be punished, and sometimes like our justice system doesn't catch them?
Most definitely. But God made those people and he made them horrible.
Well, that's not what we would believe that everyone God it's part of God's plan that people have choices and they make their own actions and choices. That's part of God's plan. So like God's not really responsible for our choices. That's he gives us
Okay.
he gives us the ability to make choices.
So with that being said, if it was in God's plan, then why didn't he automatically give us free will? Why was it something that we had to exchange for death?
Um well, so God, yeah, we had freedom, but initially we were in harmony with God, and then we were tempted because the snake said you could be like God. So we wanted to be have a closer relationship with God. We already had harmony with him, but we wanted to be closer to him to be like God, and that was the led to a separation from God. Um, and so it's like because God values our freedom, he allows us to make mistakes, and but he also has a plan, a redemptive plan to like fix everything.
Okay.
Right, right.
If God knew that us eating the fruit would end up with things the way that they are now and allowing the quote unquote snake, which was just Satan in another form, to tempt us, why would he put the tree there in the first place if he didn't want us to eat from it and he knew everything would end up like this?
Um, because he also knew that he had a plan of redemption to fix everything. So
Okay. Do you think that it's okay to shoot people just because you can sew them back together?
you have to say, well, think about like this: like when a man and a woman love each other, they come together and they go, "Well, we want to share this love," and they create a baby, and they know that the baby's going to suffer, and like the baby's not going to be perfect. The baby's probably going to like commit sins in the baby's life because every human. So even though the parents know these things, the baby's going to suffer. The baby's going to make mistakes. They still they because love wants to share itself with other people. Love is about relationship, and God being love desired a loving relationship with us, and so we have to have this like freedom because you can't force someone to love you. So unfortunately, love and freedom comes risk. So God took a risk that we would reject him, but he also has a plan where like he temporarily allows bad things in the world so that we learn not to love the world and we turn away from the world and we repent and we turn towards God and we love God instead of the world. If the world was perfect, it would be hard for us to like see why we need a relationship with God. So the suffering actually has ultimate like benefit where it'll bring the most people to freely choose a relationship with God and be with him in paradise.
If that was the case, then why didn't he give us that ability in the first place?
Well, because he could like snap his fingers and fix everything, but that doesn't like respect you as a free like thinking individual that can make choices. And God gave you like reason and freedom because he loves you. So you have that responsibility to make the like right choice to use your mind and think for yourself.
Okay. Still confused in a lot of aspects. You said that with parents, you know, they had children knowing that the child would suffer and things like that. So if God's reason for making us go through so much suffering was just to love him, even though when he created us, we loved him and we knew him personally on a very intimate level, Why would he create suffering? If
because
he loves us.
it's part of his redemption. Well, suffering is a result of what Adam and Eve, their choice. So it was suffering exists because of the choice of humans to rebel. Because he originally made everything perfect. There was no unalivement. There was no suffering, and all that happened as a result of human rebellion. So
Mm.
we're at fault for all the suffering in the world, technically. But God has a plan of redemption, and He's going to He uses the evil that humans do for ultimately like good.
Didn't he create evil?
No, humans create evil, but God uses evil for His plan.
So the humans that God had created in his image made evil, even though he created everything. And we are now, as humans, being punished for the option that he knew we would make.
It's not punishment. It's just a consequence.
Eternal suffering for not, okay, just eternal suffering, because the consequences aren't for all eternity. That's a consequence is to learn a lesson. As far as going past the, oh, you've learned a lesson, I'm still tormenting you, that's not a consequence. That's more of a, you did this, and now, because the stands for being sent to eternal damnation and suffering are, don't believe in him. That's it. That's it. That's all you have to do. That's the bare minimum of what you have to do to be sent to an eternity of recklessness. So that is the smallest crime that can get you sent to an eternity. How is that a consequence?
Because you're
How
looking
is
at
an
it the
actual
wrong.
consequence?
You're looking at it the wrong way. You're thinking like you're being naughty and like He's punishing you for being naughty. It's not like that. It's more like you're in a house that's on fire, and Jesus is trying to like save you from the burning building, and you're like refusing. You're refusing His help.
But God knew the house would be on fire, and he still let you go in anyway.
It doesn't matter. This is a situation you're in. God's not punishing you.
God created the situation, though.
God did not create. God made everything perfect, and the situation is a result of your choices. But you don't want to take responsibility for your actions. You want to blame everything on God.
No, I don't want to be held accountable for the actions of people several millennia ago.
You're
That's
not.
my thing.
You're accountable for your own actions. See,
I'm accountable for my own actions, but I'm still suffering the consequences. As a woman, I still bleed every month. You know what I'm saying? That's still a consequence from them that I have to deal with.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's life, right? If your mother, does certain things while she's pregnant, that can have consequences for the rest of your life too, right? So, unfortunately, the actions of other people affect us. That's just life. But you're not punished for other people's choices. You're punished for you are in rebellion against God, whether you admit it or not. And you need to repent and turn towards God. He will save you. And you can trust Him because He loves you.
What am I being saved from?
The bondage of sin. Like your life will be so much easier with God. He makes everything easier.
How did we get sin?
Sin entered the world through Adam, and so humans learn from imitation. Babies imitate their parents, and so we learn sin because sin's in the world, and we learn through imitation.
Mm. So we got sin because of Adam, right? And we got the reason we had sin because of Adam, because he was tempted by, quote unquote, the snake. Correct?
Yeah.
Why would God create Lucifer in the first place if he knew that would happen?
Why did God? Well, I told you because he has a plan of redemption. He had a plan of creation. There's going to be a fall, so he had a plan of redemption, and then after the plan of redemption, there's going to be a paradise, and everything's going to be it's going to be sick.
What did he need redeeming from if there was nothing broken in the first place?
Because Because Adam rebelled. What do you mean?
God knew he was going to do that, though.
Yeah.
Okay. So God knew that before he created anything, before he created a single thing, he was like, I'm going to create this. I'm going to intentionally make it fail because I know what I need to do in order to, one, not make it fail, and two, I'm all powerful. So I could just step in and not make it fail.
Even if God has
Can I
knowledge,
finish my point? I wasn't done.
you're not because you're not understanding. That's why I'm interrupting.
Neither are you. And I didn't interrupt.
But what you're doing is you're straw manning my position. That's not my position. That's why I'm interrupting you. So even if God has knowledge of the future, he knows everything ahead of time. And even if he chooses his plan for the world, nothing is actually accomplished without humans or apart from humans. Because our actions, choices, and our partnership with God are how his plan is worked out in the world. So we have choices according to his plan. Right, and our choices have consequences because that's with freedom comes responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Adam chooses to rebel against God, unfortunately, there's consequences, and we're responsible for those consequences.
Is it a choice if God knew that he was going to rebel?
Thanks for coming.
Answer my question.
Bow to me.
God. Is it that was the dog returning to its vomit like a fool swallowing?
What's going on, brother?
What's up, man? What would you like to say?
So do you believe God is omniscient?
Yes.
Okay, so when Samuel, he makes Saul raid Israel, and when he takes over Israel, I'm pretty sure he leaves the king alive and a few of the animals. God said slaughter, destroy Israel. The people residing in what's it called? Micah, I'm pretty sure it was in Micah. And so he made Saul raid it. And then God said afterwards when Saul kept the king alive and the animals alive that he regretted making Saul king and taking charge. So with God having regret, clearly, that's him, admitting that he made a mistake, or he just didn't want, he just didn't want it to happen.
No,
so with incorrect. Okay, so how do you define regret?
It's not about how I define it, right? So it's like in scripture they use like anthropomorphisms because God is set apart from creation. It's hard for us to understand him. So they'll use like emotions, human emotions to describe God. So when they say God has regret, it doesn't mean he has like regret, like mistake, or he wishes he did something other.
It literally does, though.
But
if we're made in his image, do you believe that? Do you believe we're made in God's image?
You're just gonna ignore what I'm saying.
Well, I'm gonna argue against what you're saying. You're trying to, once I bring something to your attention, you're gonna say, "Oh, it's out of our understanding." It's. No, okay, go ahead.
Argument is an intellectual process. What you are doing is contradiction. That's not
based off what?
Just contradicting what I'm saying is not an argument, and it's the quickest way to get your ass removed. So
what?
I will kick your fucking ass.
Well, why are you getting so? Why are we cussing, Christian? What's going on? Why are we swearing? What's going on?
You know what? Remember me in hell. Okay?
What's going on? Whoa.
All too easy.
What's going on?
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
I don't understand why people are getting so pressed, because it's like, bro, just let people do what they want. You be your religion, I be my religion, like, that's that.
Right on. Yeah.
This is boring. I'm not doing.
Amazing. Gen Z. There you go. Welcome.
Hello. All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the flood. So the Bible says it was around 2000 before Christ. There were civilizations that existed before and during that time. So my question is, how come there's no recordings all throughout the world of it happening,
There is flood stories all throughout the world.
but not during 2000 BC?
According to what?
The Bible literally says it happened around 2000 BC based off
Flood
some.
stories all around the world.
I don't think you're understanding my question. What I'm trying to say is that during the Bible said that. Sorry, I'm getting. This is just like a genuine question. The Bible said that a flood happened, wiping out all of humanity except for Noah and his wife and two of each animal.
Yeah. They had a story like that in like every country.
Yes, but how come it never happened at the same time? Don't you think that civilizations that existed then would have died out?
I'll just say it happened at the same time. There you go.
You still there?
Yeah, it all happened at the same time. There you go.
So how come civilization still existed then? Wouldn't it have all reset because there was only two people left?
I don't know the exact details of how civilization built.
So the problem is, that's why I have a hard time believing that your book is correct. Because all these different accords would have died out during that flood. Every civilization, Mayan, Egyptian, even some Nordic religions,
Maybe they did.
everything would have died out, correct?
Maybe they did, right? And then they came back.
At 2000 BC.
Yeah, then they came back. I don't know.
All right, and
you're dating it. I don't know if your date is exactly correct. That doesn't.
that's the estimate of around the generations after Noah that but right around when Jesus came. Mind you, I'm using only information from your book. So my theory, if you can't give me a good answer of why religions and even civilizations still existed around that time, even after your flood, when most civilizations didn't have recordings of a flood, what makes me think that your religion's true?
All civilizations recorded a flood.
But they didn't. You're just spinning this argument back and forward because you can't give me a good answer.
Google it.
So you're basing your information off Google, not your Bible.
Many civilizations have a flood myth. The Aztec, Hindu, Norse, Aboriginal, Egyptian, Babylonian.
Fun fact. Norse mythology only has one flood myth, and that's during Ragnarok, which still hasn't happened yet.
there's probably, I mean, I think this is just evidence that the flood's real.
How, if it hasn't happened yet in Norse mythology?
All these cultures have flood myths.
Again,
So there's probably a big flood and it screwed everything up, and then all these cultures descend from people who flood.
but the logistics behind having two people left, wouldn't everyone be inbred?
Right, I think that explains.
Adam and Eve, and then
Yeah, that explains why there's atheism, right? Because people were marrying their first cousins. So now we have atheists. Like Einstein married his first cousin, and Darwin married his first cousin. And then now there's atheists. Did you guys know that? Isn't that? I think it's funny that Darwin married his first cousin, and then he found out that marrying your first cousin causes genetic problems. After he had 10 children. That's a fact. That's a science fact. Man, that's a real um you know, it's a real kick to the old can't say it on TikTok probably. A kick to the balls, yeah, that's gotta be a real kick to the balls. He's doing these experiments on tomatoes, and he finds out that if tomatoes marry their first cousins, that the tomatoes are all like genetically screwed up. And then he's like, "Oh man, that explains why Timmy, Jimmy, and Bimmy. Man, that explains so much." And he like figured out through tomatoes why his children were all like genetically messed up because he married his first cousin. So the Darwins and the Wedgwoods were like just marrying each other for years. Their first cousins. There's just like tons of marrying each other. I don't know. That was like the cool thing to do if you were rich back in the day. I think it's still cool today, but they just don't tell us because they're embarrassed. Like the royals are all related to each other and stuff. Boring. Gods don't real, I swear. I read it on Reddit. That one's too long. All right, here's a good one. Kicking puppies proves atheism. That's the only way I could be convinced someone was an atheist. It's like, really, you're an atheist? Well, then kick a puppy. Because if you don't kick a puppy, you must believe in God. God is stopping you from kicking that puppy. God's saving the puppies, y'all. You know it. It's true. I have thoughts about things. My thoughts are things. I have things about things. That's for materialists. Guys, Reddit told me we shouldn't believe in God because it's like hurts people's feelings. People always bring up the like war in the Bible. Oh, God commanded this war. Well, didn't we go to war against like evil in 1940? Was it 1942? Is that when we entered the war? Wasn't that good? Like, why is it always like? Why do they always picture it like it's so like this innocent? Um, like the Amalekites are just totally innocent. They never did anything wrong, and mean old Yahweh commanded a war because he's just a jerk. Never mind the fact that he sacrificed his son so we could have a relationship with God. Never mind that. He's mean. Thanks, the gift. Thanks, Leanne. There are plenty of other G sides. Well, if there's like a culture of people that were like doing a bunch of evil things, like the Yahtzees, right? Then isn't it good? Isn't it good to get rid of an evil culture? Why is it always bad? I don't understand why. It's like you guys think it's universally bad to G side, but if there's a screwed up evil culture, then yeah, why do we want? Like you know what a culture I'd like to get rid of is maybe I'm not even allowed to say it. Like like the criminal culture that's like harmful to people, right? That's a bad like it's why do we allow that crap? It's like we glamorize crime. Why do we do that? That's kind of messed up. I'm talking about like music. There's like music videos that make it like cool to like but there's nothing cool about like you ruins the you it makes no sense. Like if you take someone's life, not only do you ruin their life, but it's like you ruin their family's life, you ruin your life, and you ruin your family's life. Like, and for what? Because of like your ego or something? Like, what the hell's wrong with people? We live in a really sick world. What's the proof of Christianity? To type in my chat, Christian God would have to be Jesus has to be God because to type in the chat, you're gonna have to be living in a world where through God's sovereign plan, there's order in the world according to God's plan. There's enough order in the world for you to type in the chat. Without God's plan, there'd be total chaos. And in a world of chaos, you couldn't even type in the chat to criticize God. Sure, in the world that so there's a universe where God creates the universe and he ordains there to be this order in the universe. And that order is necessary for you to type in the chat. In the world without God, it's total chaos. There's no reason to think that there'd be this order necessary for you to type in the chat. You just have chaos. So it's a world of order versus chaos. If everything's random, a cosmic accident, then like randomly every time you type a word? Why doesn't the letter just be random? Why does the letters consistently that you type on the keyboard on your phone, consistently those letters appear in the chat the same way you type them out? Why isn't it random? Define chaos. Oh my god. When I'm talking about chaos, I'm talking about that there's a world of no meaning or purpose. There's no inherent meaning in the world. There's no inherent purpose. There's no intentionality behind the creation of the universe. So you have meaningless process. Human beings are the result of a meaningless process, cosmic accident, as opposed to a mind that is purposing for there to be human beings. So without purpose, there's no order, there's chaos, right? There's no reason to think that there's patterns and connections. The fact that we look at nature and we use our intelligence to discern the patterns in the world, that indicates that there's like, it's either that our the patterns in the world aren't real and our mind is like imposing those patterns upon nature, or the patterns are real and there's like an inherent connection. There's some purpose making the patterns happen. If there's no purpose behind the world, there's no reason to think there's any like guiding force behind these patterns that we observe. So the patterns would be like fake. Prove the Bible without using the Bible.
I've got a serious, actual fucking question.
Okay.
Are you stoned because you've just gone back and forth on the same like chaos and order sentence the last 10 minutes?
He lied to me. That wasn't a serious question. Welcome.
Hello. So I have like one question. And it has nothing to do about like even like any facts or whatever. Like, I mean, you could probably bring facts to it, but like, why does there need to be purpose? I keep hearing people talk about if there's no purpose, is that just because you're scared that there's no purpose, we're gonna die and there's nothing? Because like, to me, there doesn't need to be purpose. What's the purpose that I take a step? I could just lay in bed for the rest of the day. There doesn't have to be purpose, but I feel that humans are just so scared of what happens that, oh yeah, now we have to make this purpose. That's my only question. Why does there have to be purpose?
Because when you talk as if there is like purpose would be implicit behind.
Okay, yeah, but like in the world scale of things, that's what you're saying. You're saying the world has no purpose without God. But what I'm saying is the purpose is just to exist and be on this world, right? So I'm saying it's weird that humans think that there should be an overall purpose when our purpose is the small things we do on the earth right now. So yes, you're right. I have a purpose in saying what I'm saying. But in my opinion, at least, because I don't know truly what happens after death, in my opinion, it's not the purpose that God wants me. You feel what I'm saying?
If you're the result of like a meaningless process, then any meaning is like a fantasy.
Okay, but that's okay. That is not how that works at all. But I mean,
it's literally logically and necessarily follows that if you are the product of a meaningless process, then any meaning that you come up with is just going to be a fantasy. It's pretend meaning.
oh, okay, I know what you're saying. My fault. Oh, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. We make our own meaning. That's what I'm saying. Why do we need a God that gives us purpose and meaning? We are making our meaning on this earth right now. Why do we look outside, see the earth, see the beauty, and we're like, nah, I want to die and see God because God's so much greater than this. Maybe he is. Maybe you're right.
Yeah, there's no truth. If there's no meaning, there's no truth. Nothing means anything. Nothing.
Oh my God, that's not.
Real.
You're all right. Okay.
Life is a fantasy. You're not living in reality.
All right, bro. Okay. I
You
guess
want
I'm
to
not living in reality.
If you want to be a realist, you got to be a Christian.
No, and that's when you're even more wrong. Like, dude, so you're telling me there's a single religion? Like,
what would be your objective standard for right and wrong? It's just a fantasy, remember?
I mean, technically, yeah, but if we're in a fantasy and you're agreeing that we're in a fantasy, that means that your points are fantasies.
When
So
you say
you're
I'm
just
wrong, you must actually just be a Christian, because, like, according to your position, there's no such thing as wrong. That's a fantasy.
No, according to my position, I can individually point things out that are wrong or right or this and that.
Real.
I can make a purpose. And sure, if you want to say that's a fantasy purpose, then that's a fantasy purpose. But it's my purpose. All I'm telling you is, yes, the whole world, at the end of the day, us dying, let's assume it's nothing. That means we have quote unquote no purpose, because we have no purpose. We weren't put here by a God. Like you said, we were randomly put here, which means we technically have no purpose, right? So if I'm saying that, then I can say that we can make purpose, and I can still make right or wrong. Technically speaking, is 2 + 2 4? Yeah, but is it? I mean, technically, I could say that I'm right, but am I really right? Who decided 2 + 2? You feel what I'm saying? Like, it's just.
Well, you shouldn't be arguing if that's your position. You're contradicting yourself by coming up here to argue. And I thought someone else was requesting. I wouldn't have kicked you. I would have kept talking to you, but someone else was requesting. And honestly, what you're saying is like, here's how. I mean, what you're saying is ridiculous. It deserves one of the. Gosh dang it! That Billy Madison clip would have been perfect for what you were saying. I should have had that queued up.
What you just said.
So the timing is horrible. Welcome.
Every point here. I'll start off with 5. Shadow is to light as science is to theism, or atheism is to theism. You can't say that shadow is a light, because shadow is the lack of light. And atheism and science is the lack of religion. So you can't say that no religion is a religion. Like, that's just nonsensical.
Okay. Go on.
I'll do.
I can't hear you when you alt tab. You there?
There are multiple Bible verses that are saying stuff like servants should be, or slaves should obey their masters, and like Peter 2:18, that are just, yeah, of course there's slavery if they're talking about how slaves should be obedient.
Right.
Christianity has no proof. There isn't proof, because the proof that you guys are bringing forth, like the Bible itself, isn't proven. That is a claim. You can't claim that the Bible is true, therefore your religion is true. You can't prove a claim with a claim.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
This is atheism. This is atheism. How do if I can't? I mean, like, how do I prove anything? Like, all to prove something, you have to make a claim. You have to make an assertion. Like, how can you prove something without making a claim? Oh my goodness. I mean, may God have mercy on your soul. That's all I can say. Like, wow. But if you can't, any proof is going to have a claim. You can't prove something without claims. You definitely can prove things with claims. Like, if we couldn't use claims to prove things, we couldn't prove anything. All proofs are a claim. I'm pretty sure that there isn't one proof that exists that is not also a claim. So if claims don't prove things, then there's no proof of anything. So this is like a really lazy thing. When people don't know how to debate and they're lazy, they'll go, "You're just making a claim. That's an assertion." Well, they're just lazy. So they don't know how to provide a counter argument to your argument, and so they just go, "That's a claim." When you've actually, no, that was a devastating and precise argument, right? Tiny, welcome. It's good to see you. I feel like Tiny is, yeah, it's just an assertion, see? But when you say something is an assertion, then you're predicating, and predication is a veridical claim. So it's like, how do you justify your use of logic? And then they go, it is what it is. Reality. Reality. They shouldn't even be able to say reality because, like, they have no access to reality. Christianity is objectively proven with a transcendental argument for God. Reality is reality. Exactly. I debated Planet Peterson yesterday. I wouldn't really call it much of a debate. Like, Planet Peterson is mod and he just like bulldozes the conversation and he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. It's like hard to even talk to him because he's so like low hanging fruit. Do I believe in dinosaurs? Hell yeah, dude. I love dinosaurs. If dinosaurs still existed, I would buy a dinosaur. You're out. Do you remember the show Denver the Last Dinosaur?
The last dinosaur. He's my friend and a whole lot more. The last dinosaur shows me a world I never saw before. From the hot jungle a long time ago comes a cool friend like Alpine. The last dinosaur. He's my friend and a whole lot more. Shows me a world I never saw before. Everywhere we go, we don't really care if people stop and stare at our dino. From prehistory to the rock and roll spotlight, we got a friend who helps us make it feel alright. That's the last dinosaur. He's my friend and a whole lot more. Denver, the last dinosaur. Shows me what I never saw.
Science is not neutral. Science is not objective. Science is not free from the other sciences or the other disciplines that, in fact, do come with a theory. Right? It's impossible.
Why do I believe this? Because it's brain. No, because I'm a critical thinker, Sally.
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
What the hell?
Apologies. Please try again and tell me, what were you looking for?
I didn't summon you, AI. You can go straight to hell. Why did that AI, my AI started talking to me? Did you hear that? It freaks me the shit out. Why does the AI just randomly start talking to you? It's freaking AIs, dude. Look, we can't trust these AIs, okay? Yeah, so anyways, I'm a critical thinker and I'm evidence-based, and that's how I came to all these positions. What do you mean I am not serious?
Possible to be completely neutral. Every interpretation of everything in the world is theory laden. It's impossible to be completely neutral and completely factual because there's no given facts that don't have an interpretive context or theory or system within which those facts exist. So if that's the case, and I think that it's pretty easy to demonstrate that philosophically, we can begin to see how science, and I'm not saying there is no science, there is science, but what popularly goes by the title of science for a long time is in fact another layer of propaganda. Again, I'm not denying that there are many engineers, many scientists out there who do legit science, of course. But the notion, prominent from the time of the Enlightenment on, that you can be philosophically neutral and produce science or objective facts that don't fit into any interpretive matrix is completely impossible. There's no such thing as a brute fact. Anything that we interpret or understand in the world is part of a larger paradigm or schema that we have for interpreting the world. It doesn't mean that we can't know anything or that nothing's true. It just means that that's how we're so constituted. That's just how we are. We interpret things within our worldview. And so therefore, with that in mind, we can actually begin to see how it makes perfect sense that the birth of modern science actually comes out of these kinds of occult orders, and occult Rosicrucian, Freemasonic, Hermetic, and alchemical philosophies. Now, these philosophies are not so much prominent now, but
yeah, like the guy credited with the scientific method is Francis Bacon, and I think Francis Bacon was an occultist who did like alchemy and stuff.
Because science has moved on and sort of morphed out of that older baggage, you could say. But what is still present is a lot of the same mythos. And I would argue that even perhaps at the highest levels of science, you have a form of Luciferianism, a form of initiatory knowledge, which is actually seeking to become divine, to achieve godhood. That is the explanation for transhumanism.
Wait, but isn't that transhumanist is like seeking to be like God? Interesting. But isn't theosis doing the same thing?
Doesn't.
Really? So science is an attempt for human to all these like human endeavors, do they basically boil down to like this attempt to be God or something?
That's the explanation for where people are going in the post-human world, what they're trying to do. That explains everything with what's being promoted today, what we're seeing now with the technocracy, right? All of that stuff is explained in that paradigm that I'm giving you. Now, from the paradigm of science, so-called scientism, right? This kind of basic bitch view that you get out there, nothing is actually coherently explained, ironically. I mean, you can get hyper precision with understanding, I don't know, nanotechnology.
No, I don't believe in theosis, but the guy I'm listening to is Orthodox. And he's talking about how transhumanism is an attempt to be God, and I'm like, well, aren't you doing that with theosis? That's what I was saying. I was kind of giving him a tit for tat.
Something like that. But when these disciplines that are hyper precise,
feelings aren't facts. Don't use science, then. Laugh my ass off. Well, I'd rather subvert science to Christ. Welcome.
Yo, what's up, brother?
What's up?
I think for number 3, because I know it's in the Bible that Jesus fucked horses like every day, and he still like rapes horses like constantly in heaven.
Yeah, this is atheism.
Why does he do that? Oh wait,
This is atheism. So when you reject God, he gives you over to a depraved mind, and this is what we get. So there's not very many like mature, like intellectual non-believers, you know. It's a lot of stuff like that.
try to step back and speak about all of life, right? Like molecular biology. Then they reach back into the ancient aeons past, which are not empirically observed, and they throw out the wildest theories that consciousness just came to be out of nothing.
Right? Like, think about all the things that scientists would have us believe, that consciousness came, like, an irrational world produced rational beings. Like, what?
Magic worldviews.
Magic.
When we think of evolutionary theory, we realize that the concepts of evolution are ancient, right? Ancient Hinduism, ancient Egyptian philosophy, ancient Greek philosophy all had versions of atomism, of things morphing into magically changing into other things, right? This is the reality behind the origins of these worldviews. And if you go back to the English lodges, right? Again, people, I'm not the first person to say this. This has been written on by historians. It's actually those occult lodges that gave us the idea of Darwinism, of Darwinian theory. Now, I'm not saying that Darwin himself, but many of those others in his circle, the Huxleys, right? These people were part of these lodges that had this esoteric philosophy, this alchemical philosophy. And the thing about that is that it gives the appearance of wisdom, but in fact it is absurd, right? It's the same as like ancient Hinduism. It gives the appearance of wisdom, and I'm not saying there weren't intelligent ancient Hindus, but
it's funny because he's talking about Hinduism, but they get theosis comes from Hinduism.
At base, the philosophy is very contradictory. It'll say things like nothing can come into being on its own, and yet at the same time, consciousness evolves into being, but at the same time, we don't even know what consciousness is, and in fact, there is no consciousness, right? You get these constant vacillating contradictions and dialectics all the time in these ridiculous philosophies. So on the one hand, we're told that humanism is the goal, for example, right? All these Enlightenment philosophers and humanists, they want to exalt man, right? The Humanist Manifesto. And yet, what is man? Man is a meaningless product of goo.
Well, that's what I read in the book by Dr. Robert Morey. It's called Is Eastern Orthodox Christian? He makes a case that theosis originally comes from Hinduism and Buddhism.
Ancient Kumar goo, right? Meaningless Kumar goo of the aliens. The alien Kumar goo is you, right? Literally. Okay, so that's more rational than theism, supposedly, by many of the panspermia theorists.
Do I just read books I agree with? Well, I read books that I like to read books that provoke my thinking, I guess.
Even. It's just another mythology. And this is what a lot of people have a hard time understanding, is that they think that there's like this grand council of science somewhere that like knows all and sees all and determines.
The Grand Council of Science. That's actually what this is actually what Peterson talked about. Welcome.
What's up?
What would you like to say?
So, atheism, religion, any of them, neither one can be 100% proven. Correct?
Christianity is proven.
How?
The transcendental argument for God would 100%.
Still not 100% proven.
It is 100%.
I'm sorry. No matter what you do, there's nothing. It can't be 100% proven. Just can't.
Can you prove that?
What?
That Christianity can't be 100% proven. Can you prove that?
No, and you can't prove atheism can't be 100% right.
Thanks for coming.
Same for both.
A waste of time.
Just based on the evidence. It's all mythology. Now, does that mean that individual scientists in these disciplines...
That same guy better not... Dude. Why are you wasting my time, Delon?
Do you want to let me finish my argument, or are you just going to kick me again?
I don't.
No? Okay.
Your argument that...
Because you don't want a real debate. You just want somebody to walk through points for you.
You said you're not certain of your argument. You don't believe your own argument. So
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. If you let me finish. If you let me finish.
You know anything, and I can't know anything. That's what you're arguing.
If two things can't be 100% proven, you look at which one's more rational. And from a standpoint of two of them can't be proven, atheism is way more rational than a book that gives you a bunch of stories that are magical and unrealistic. One of them just says doubt. The other one gives you a bunch of stories that make no sense.
You're granting yourself rationality. How would atheism explain the ability to be rational?
What was that?
You're granting yourself rationality. How do you explain, what would be your reason that you have rational faculties that are accurate?
Because all atheism does is give you doubt.
Stop coming up here and wasting my time. You don't have anything to offer. Welcome, Cypher.
Yo, it's good.
What's good? What would you like to say?
Your number one topic, Christianity is objectively proven.
Yeah.
Could you explain what you mean by
that? That Christianity is a fact of the world. We now know Christianity is true.
So could I bring up like a counter to the legitimacy of Christianity?
Well, you would have to prove, could you prove materialism, or could you prove that no immaterial beings are God?
I'm not sure, but I think I could show you a contradiction in what we'd expect to see in a world that the Christian God existed in.
Okay, but that doesn't really do anything, though, because...
Well, yeah, because if it was like the Christian God makes everything red, right, and we didn't see red in the world, that would show us the Christian God either isn't as described in the Bible or isn't real at all, right?
But to even do an internal critique on my position, you need to use some principle of logic, but how would you have logic without Christianity?
Well, I'm not necessarily saying there isn't a God, just that the Christian God as described in the Bible may not be real, right? So I guess I can still, apply my logic or whatever to a God, right?
No. Wrong.
You don't get your logic from a God?
So...
You don't think logic comes from a God?
If God intended that the universe doesn't know God, could we know God?
I'm not sure. I don't know the exact properties of the Christian God.
You're not sure?
What do you think? I mean, I know I couldn't necessarily hide myself from everyone. if I wanted to.
If
So.
God, who created the universe, creates it in a way that the universe doesn't know God, can we know God?
If referring to the Christian God, I don't think so, because he's supposed to be all powerful, right? So if he wants to do something, it should happen. So if he wants to hide himself from us, then no, we shouldn't be able to see him.
So the only way we can know God, you can't logic your way to God. You can't science your way to God. The only way you can know God is if God takes the initiative to give you that knowledge.
Okay, so are you saying God definitely gave you the knowledge of his existence?
Yeah.
Can you prove that?
Yeah, because if you deny that knowledge, then knowledge would be impossible. So we
Well, I'm
have
not denying that you have the knowledge. I'm just asking if you can prove that God gave you that knowledge.
Yeah, the proof for God's revelation is that God's revelation is necessary for proof. So there is no proof apart from God's revelation. Proof is
So it's kind
impossible.
of a circular argument. You're saying
It's not
I
circular.
have proof of God's revelation because God's revelation is necessary for proof.
Yeah. So here's
That's a circular argument.
no. Where's the circularity? So if
So
not,
you're saying I have proof for God's revelation, right? Which is proof for God. My proof is that God must exist for me to have proof.
right. So proof would implicitly be evidence for God because God's necessary for proof. How is that circular?
You don't get it.
No, premise one, God is necessary.
Well,
Here, premise one, God's necessary for proof. Premise two, we have proof. Conclusion, we have God. Where's the
so
circular?
what's the proof for his revelation?
You said it was circular. Where's the? Admit you were wrong.
Yeah. So what's the proof for his revelation? That's the circular part.
God's necessary for proof. Oh, look, admit you were wrong about being circular.
Yes.
It was being
Sure. What is the proof of the revelation? How can you prove he revealed himself to you?
Yeah, the denial of that revelation is impossible to
Not denying it. I'm asking how you can prove he revealed himself to you.
The impossibility of the contrary. The denial of the revelation leads to a contradiction. So it's
Okay,
impossible.
so again, I'm not saying he did not reveal himself to you. I'm asking if you can prove that he revealed himself to you.
Yeah, what's your relationship like with your father?
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, did your dad not give you enough attention growing up, so now you're a shit-posting loser on TikTok?
Sounds like I beat you, bro.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I'll catch you later.
Later. Oh my god. Welcome.
What's up?
What's up, man?
Oh, nothing. So, guy pretty much just had the same argument that me and you have had multiple times. The guy before me. So I'm not even going to get into that.
Oh,
yeah.
Very virtuous.
What?
It's very virtuous of you.
Well, I mean, you're never able to actually come to a answer for it. So
Okay. Well,
you
can just go to hell. There you go. What the fuck's wrong with people, dude?
So, yeah, okay, so that it's not true. That's cool.
No, I didn't say that.
You did. What do you want to talk about next?
I think I want to make a video.
Okay.
He giggles after I leave.
Revelatory nature of scripture in order to know what the truth is and make claims about the truth completely falls apart.
Well, your question's incoherent because
It's not.
I would use God's revelation to verify right and wrong. So how would I, if I'm wrong about revelation, then what would it even mean to be right? It wouldn't have no meaning to be right or
I don't really know.
He doesn't understand what I'm saying.
Do you think that it's possible that you're wrong? That's an incoherent question. Another loaded.
It was like fake laugh. What is this like?
So, not every Christian's interpretation of Scripture can be correct, right? There could be multiple correct interpretations. Yeah, like you
Why is this
could
like
have
cutting
correct
out?
interpretations that overlap with some of theirs, but not all of them. Something like that, or whatever. Like there are evolutionary theists out there, like inspiring philosophy.
Well, I talked to him for
right?
like a
So he believes,
half hour.
He believes Jesus died and resurrected, and he believes God created the universe. But so, is it possible that Michael Jones is wrong, or is right? Actually, I should say. He's definitely wrong about evolution. Yeah. Is it possible that he's right? I don't think so. Okay, so is it possible that you're wrong? About evolution? No. Why is it impossible that you're wrong? Because if evolution is true, that means the Bible isn't.
Right, if evolution is true.
So the question is, do you think?
Well, I might wind it down. I guess I'm not really. I kind of want to make a. The prompt is not rage bait. Atheism is rage bait. Yeah, I kind of want to make a clip with Peterson here, so I might end the live. I'll probably go live later. I wish you well.